Get ready for it!
The story starts off with a guy, Hiraku, waking up from a dream in which all he can hear is the sound of the Holter monitor. Until that too flatlines, and there are no signs of a heartbeat. After he wakes up, he murmurs about the fact that he's had this dream again. Not giving it much thought, rubbing his eyes, Hiraku steps out of his room. There he is greeted by a maid that happens to have a horn in her head. She calls him master and apologizes for not having the breakfast prepared yet. However, Hiraku doesn't think much of it and simply asks her to stop calling him master. So the maid refers to him as village chief. Walking past the kitchen, he greets another maid, who seems to be having trouble with cooking a certain creature. Hiraku mentions to her that she finally entered the kitchen. However, the maid seems disappointed for letting her guard down and talks about burning the creature. Hiraku, on the other hand, disagrees and asks her to spare it. Now, outside of his lodge, Hiraku is greeted by an elf lady who happens to be walking by. In a friendly demeanor, she questions Hiraku that he's up pretty early. Hiraku also replies with the same tone and tells her he just happened to wake up. Amidst the conversation, another female with wings lands from the sky, and when asked what's up, she answers that she had some business in Gran Maria during her rounds. The elf asks if there was any trouble, but the angel woman assures her there is none. However, she is going to mention the reports of something, but she catches Hiraku spacing out and asks if she can help. Hiraku answers that it's nothing much, he's just been having this weird dream lately, or perhaps a memory from his past. Then we get to see all of Hiraku's farm, where we can see people of several races such as elves, horned people, lizard people, and even cat people working together in harmony. Kids are playing around, and it's a beautiful sight to look at. Thinking about all that he has, Hiraku feels grateful. But now it's time to jump back into the past. There we finally learn how Hiraku ended up in the world. In his spirit form, Hiraku is greeted by a god. He mentions that Hiraku Machio lived a life of 39 years. It was a harsh life, and he was constantly betrayed by his loved ones till a terminal illness got the best of him. After learning that he's dead, Hiraku's reaction isn't very surprised, but rather calm. However, God offers Hiraku another chance to live life, and this time it will be his request. Since it's the god's fault that Hiraku had to live such a miserable life, this is a form of atonement for that. So he asks Hiraku if there's anything he'd like. Surprisingly, Hiraku asks the god to be a farmer in a faraway land from civilization, where he can live peacefully. His reasoning for this is that he used to watch a show about an idol's farming experience, and he loved watching it. So after talking with the god of agriculture, the god blesses Hiraku with the omnipotent tool of farming and strikes his soul with his stick. The next thing Hiraku knows is that he wakes up in a forest in a perfectly new body of a young man. Being able to move his body again, Hiraku is very happy and mentions how cool a healthy body can be. After that, he immediately takes a look at his surroundings and thinks of what he can do to set up a farm in this forest. Then it occurs to him that he's got the farming tool. After using it, he realizes that it has some sort of magical power in it, since no matter how much he strikes the ground, he doesn't get tired. After playing around with the tool a bit, he realizes that now he needs water and seeds to plant in the fluffy soil. So he closes his eyes and listens too closely to hear the noise of a river, but all he hears is leaves. Just then he feels something going past him, and then it occurs to him that it could be a monster. So, pushing all his plans aside, Hiraku prioritizes finding a place to settle down. Running around the forest looking for a place to rest, Hiraku finally comes across a very large tree and decides to set up his camp there. But now the next thing to do is to find some water and other materials that are essential for survival. So Hiraku wanders around a little bit in search of a pond. Unfortunately though, he still finds nothing, so he decides to use dowsing. A method to find hidden objects under the ground is by using a pendulum or a stick. He tries to find water using this method, however he soon realizes that this may not be the correct way to do it. So, after being bored of it, he decides to dig a well instead. At first, he tries to summon some different machines using the omnipotent farming tool, but he soon realizes that he can't summon something he can't imagine properly. So, in the end, he ends up using a shovel to dig down into the ground. Similar to before, this time also Hiraku feels no fatigue at all and keeps digging, till he comes to the realization that he's dug too deep and he can't get out. So he begins digging diagonally, and finally water comes gushing out. After that, Hiraku decides to secure something edible, but he also realizes that he isn't really hungry. He wonders if that is because of the omnipotent tool that he doesn't feel hungry. Either way, he has to still collect some useful materials, so summoning a scythe. He begins to clear out his camp of wheat in the hopes of finding something edible and useful. However, in the end, he finds nothing. With the sun still out, the next thing Hiraku decides on doing is clear out the field he'll be using for farming. So he summons an axe to cut through the tree. Recalling back on what he had learned in the documentary, Hiraku plans on making a deep cut through one side of the tree, and then cutting the rest of it from the opposite side, so that it doesn't fall on him. However, when he strikes the axe onto the tree, because of the farming tool's magical powers, the axe cuts through the tree like butter. And the tree comes falling onto Hiraku, so he has to put in the work to get away from it, otherwise he'd be crushed. After cutting the trees down using a knife, Hiraku then cuts through the tree, forming it into logs, and skinning its barks. And then using a hook-like tool, he drags and assembles the log, even though he can't remember the name of the instrument. As long as he can imagine it, the farming tool will take its shape. Now, after assembling all the wood, Hiraku wonders if he can make a hut off of it and whether it would be hard since he has no nails or adhesive. Just then he realizes that it's getting dark, and because he was too absorbed in collecting wood, he forgot about arranging a light source before night fell. So he tries to scream for a lamp, fire, or a lighter, but the farming tool can't change into any of them. Because of certain jurisdictions that the god had mentioned earlier, trying to think of a solution, Hiraku summons a magnifying glass so he can use the rays of the sun to create fire. However, that plan is also an epic failure since the sun is setting. With not many options left, using a farming tool, Hiraku hastily creates a hole in the giant tree trunk and uses that as his shelter. Inside the trunk, Hiraku thinks about how the night isn't as bad as he thought it is, because his eyesight is perfectly healthy inside of his new body. Or is it because of the 2 moons that are shining brightly in the sky? Either way, he can still see, plus using a chisel, Hiraku also manages to make some utensils for the hut. This makes him realize that he'll only learn how to make the perfect hut by trial and error. After spending the entire night trying to figure out what he can do with the wood that he carved, the sun finally rises and Hiraku has new plans for the day. First, he drinks water from the well, using the cup he had carved last night. And this time, without wasting a moment, he summons the magnifying glass, and using the bark skin, he finally lights up some fire. After fulfilling the 2 of these necessities, he spends the rest of this time clearing out the field. While doing this, he realizes that even though the farming tool doesn't tire him out, he still gets tired nonetheless when he's not using the tool. So, in short, he's starting to get hungry. For a moment, Hiraku thinks of changing his strategy and looking for some food, but just as he's thinking that the food comes running at him in the form of a monster rabbit with canines that is trying to eat Hiraku. Not giving it a second thought, Hiraku strikes down his sickle-like tool and ends up killing the rabbit. While Hiraku does think of it as an unfortunate incident, he also knows that a blessing from the gods shouldn't be wasted, so he buries the rabbit's head in a fluffy soil. And after skinning it with a knife created by the farming tool, he cooks the rabbit meat and eats it. Even though it isn't the most pleasant food out there due to a lack of seasoning and the stench of dried blood, it's all that Hiraku has, so he digs in. Now, Hiraku is a smart guy, so he knows Newton's 3rd law that states every action has a reaction. So before the reaction to the food going in comes out, he decides on making a toilet. At first, he makes a simple toilet that will collect all the filth in the deep hole and release the gas through a small hole. However, he also realizes that he can't simply do his business in the open. So putting all the ideas he had while being up all night, he finally manages to build walls and a roof for the toilet. After that, Hiraku finally begins to plow the fields, but after doing so, he soon realizes that he'll need seeds to grow them. So, in the end, he will have to go and search for the seeds after all, thinking about all the wonderful things that he'll grow, such as potatoes, onions, and corn. Hiraku falls asleep, but when he wakes up the next day, to his surprise, he finds many saplings in the field. and that too of various kinds. Enthralled by this, Hiraku is extremely happy and wonders if plants grow in this world without seeds, or if it was the power of the farming tool. Now ever so motivated, Hiraku decides to protect his fields by putting a wooden fence around it, and then creating a trench outside of the fence, so that no monsters such as the rabbits can attack his crops. After several days, the fence and the trench were complete, and in the meantime, Hiraku kept himself fed by eating the rabbits that came after him. After that, as the days passed and Hiraku saw his crops grow little by little, in the meantime he was able to finally make a hut. At first it was a challenge since he couldn't get to the roof, so he dug the ground in the hut so that he could make it bigger, without having to raise the roof. Even though the hut was far from perfect, it was still better than living in a trunk. Seeing his crops grow each and every day motivated Hiraku more and more until one day, as his life was taking off, two seemingly injured dogs showed up at his place. Feeling bad for them, Hiraku took them in and offered them some meat that he'd cut from the boar he just hunted. Soon he noticed that one of the dog's stomachs was bulging, and it was because she was about to give birth, so he took her in his hut. However, trying not to interfere in the process, that night Hiraku decided to stay away from the dogs and spend the night under the tree trunk. There he felt as if the world had gotten a little dimmer, and as he was thinking of all of this, his eyes closed and awakened to a new morning. After waking up, Hiraku ran to his hut to check for the dogs and got a pleasant surprise in the form of 4 cute puppies drinking their mother's milk. As a celebration of the birth, Hiraku gave the best cut of the boar to the puppies, and all of them indulged in it. And since he felt bad for kicking the dogs out of his hut, he just made a new one. After that, he named the dogs Kuro and Yuki, who would hunt for him and surprisingly also eat vegetables and fruits. So, at the end of episode 1, Hiraku managed to have 2 dogs, 4 puppies, a farm, 2 huts, and a toilet. God, in his ultimate grace and strength, decides to check up on Hiraku. He admits that he is God, and he stands supreme over everything. And despite all of his supreme nature, there are also times when he makes mistakes. He admits to his infallibility, and says that in the case of Hiraku, his infallibility had allowed him mistakenly to give him a life, where he would be known for just hardship. A life of that just for sinners, despite the fact that Hiraku is just an innocent man. He claims he couldn't interfere in the life he had offered Hiraku because, despite being God, there was a limit to his grace and righteousness. So he cannot intrude into the life of a person who has been sent to the world already. As a result, he stayed calm and watched as Hiraku suffered in the world of sinners, despite being a man with no sin accounted to his life. Eventually, Hiraku dies, and as the merciful father that God thinks he is, he decides to apologize to Hiraku for the mistake in the production process. He had decided that he would fulfill Hiraku's wish of being incarnated as a farmer in a different world. I think luck and favor aren't words that align with Hiraku's destiny. And at least it won't be the fault of the sovereign being who had decided to do him a favor. God, while looking through his globe to see where Hiraku is, admits he is the one in charge of souls, and he controls them. I mean, that's what God is for. He unfortunately sees that Hiraku has been reincarnated into a world where there is no living being to be a farmer. A lonely world with just deadly animals and plain ground, and he is there all alone. Remember what I said about luck and favor not being Hiraku's forte, because why in the name of God should an apology from God lead to another calamity? Anyways, God feels terrible for his action, although it isn't purposefully and he isn't intentional. In fact, the paternalistic feature of the heavenly being attempts to help Hiraku by taking him out of that life that he is presently in. But God remembers that he cannot mess with the journey of a human when they have been sent to Earth. He finds out that Hiraku is at the Valley of Death. Yes, the Valley of Death. Yes, and incarnated being incarnated into the Valley of Death. Double injury. He eventually concludes that since he can't take Hiraku away, he is very sure that Hiraku will die in that valley that he is in. He will return back to him, and when Hiraku returns to him, he will apologize to Hiraku and send him to another world. Trust me, you don't want to be in Hiraku's position right now. Anyways, when life gives you a lemon, people will say you can make it a lemonade. In fact, Hiraku doesn't know that his existence in the world in which he presently exists is risky to him and his soul. He decides to make lemonade from the world of lemon, And since he is a farmer who has been granted divine strength and grace by God, he uses his powers to farm. He realizes that after sprouting a part of the land, the plant he thinks about coming out, he is trying to juxtapose what power it is. Especially since he doesn't know the crops as a baby, so he thinks of soybeans, which will be quite easy to recognize as a little seed. He finds out he gets everything he desires, at least one advantage of being in a world that nobody wants. He says that he has decided to farm with his powers, and he has also raised a statue of God on his farm. The reason being that he realizes it's the grace of God which had availed him the opportunity to be in that place at that moment, if only he really knew. Hiraku makes his dinner from drained dead animals, and he serves the gods which he had saved earlier. He realizes the food he is eating is without taste, considering that the meal was made without any seasoning. But he had also realized that the absence of seasoning doesn't really affect the meat, because he had drained it immediately after they were killed. He still wishes for seasoning, so the following day, he decides to farm for fruit. He thinks of the different fruits he wants and then makes a bed for them, with the hopes of when the fruits enter his food, it will be more pleasing and palatable to the soul. He does this because he doesn't find salt. He misses the usage of salt, and that's the only regret he has of the entire area he is in at the moment. He thinks of what to do. After he has finished planting several fruits to ensure his taste buds increase a little, he plays with one of the puppies and throws a bowl into the sky for the puppy to catch. The atmosphere there is eventually becoming calm and livable for a human, and he loves his new life. He sees that some weird horns are growing on the puppies, and he assumes that that is how puppies are in that world. He sees other puppies are longing for his touch, and they also want to play with him. One advantage of living with puppies is that you can't get misplaced. Their fast-smelling scent will always keep a tail of their hut and take them back home. With the help of the puppies, he walks around the forest, trying to explore the forest more and see what could be more beneficial to him. He eventually finds a stream of water in the woods. He's glad because he really could use a water stream at that moment. The place where he has seen the water is about 30 kilometers from where his hut is, and he had decided that he would dig a path to get the water to his hut, and the work may take him a long period of time. As a result, he built a toilet by the river since he may be staying there for the next few days. He has fun by turning one of his powerful instruments into a wheel, which he uses to ride one of his puppies to the river. He does that happily one day until he enters a porthole that falls both himself and the puppy. He decides that if he wants to do something like that, he will have to repair the road first. Hiraku is tired. He thinks of how long he has spent in that forest and how he has no human friends. Gradually, the snow sets in, he feels very cold, and his clothes are not helping matters. He decides to make fur from dead rabbits, but that attempt is futile because the rabbits are decaying and they stink, and he couldn't find himself in the clothes. He resigns to fate. And he sets a fire in his hut to keep him warm while he thinks of what to do. He meets a spider who uses his strength to make a handkerchief for him. He is amazed to see someone who can make him clothes, and he asks the spider to make him a cardigan. He also makes several covers for his bed and the windows, and he is ready for the snow. He decides to name the spider Zabaton, and he becomes closer to Zabaton. Eventually, the winter sets in completely. The winter sends cold into the hut, and he is concerned that it may break his hut. His puppies stay in the hut to stay warm while Zabaton remains on her tree without interfering. He's still concerned about the absence of salt, as it doesn't give him the opportunity to make the type of food he wants to make. And he's also getting lonely. He comments that he hasn't spoken with a person in months, and he fears that as time goes on, he won't be able to speak again. Eventually, the winder crawls away, and thankfully it doesn't destroy his hut or harm his puppies. Growing up, he realizes the puppies are completely different. They will suddenly run into the forest, and he doesn't know what they're doing there. Seeing them grow is something that has made him feel great joy, as well as sadness. After several days, the puppies return back. I don't know why and how he still refers to them as puppies despite their fearful look, but he calls them his puppies. He finds out that they had all gone into the forest to find a partner for themselves, and he sees that one of his puppies is returning home tired and angry. He assumes that he had fought for his partner. Also, he sees another surprise that he isn't prepared for. It's Zabuton. He sees Zabuton with several baby spiders and realizes that she is female. Although he's happy for all of his animals, he's also jealous that at least they have partners to talk with. But here he is with no one. And that also means one thing, which is more mouths to feed and more work to do. He gets to action immediately, and he starts cultivating. He suddenly heard Zabuton ringing the warning bell. He assumes that something is wrong, and one of his puppies also comes to call his attention. He leaves what he's doing and attends to whatever emergency it may be. He sees a young girl beside the tree. She's scared, and she calls for his help. So he goes to meet her. She suddenly jumps at him and sucks his blood. Suddenly she becomes an adult and gets very big. He's amazed at this sight, and he tries to talk to her, but she insults the dog and they bounce on her the second time. They all hit her around, and she gets small again. Hiraku stops the dogs. He asks her if she is his enemy or his friend, so he will know what to do with her. She tells him she isn't his enemy. He asks why she sucked his blood, and she tells him it's because she is weak and the animals have taken all her strength, which is why she is small. He offers her his blood again, so that she can get bigger. She starts sucking his blood, but he notices that he isn't feeling anything or feeling numb. He assumes it's because he eats good. After she is done sucking, she tells him she hasn't taken much healthy blood in a while, and he takes her into his home. She sees all his plants, and she is shocked that a plantation that is as good as that can be in the forest. She sees the tomato, and she doesn't recognize it. He realizes she doesn't know what a tomato is, so he brings out his scissors and cuts one for her to eat. As she takes a bite out of it, she says that the texture of it is nice and it tastes very good. Hiraku is glad to see someone commend him since he has started living in that world. He takes her around his entire plantation, and he shows her several other plants like the cassava, which they eat together, and many more. After a long day of exploring the farm, the girl is so glad she has visited. She tells him she is Lulu Lucy, and she's a vampire. She tells him she is a researcher who researches about plants, and she has never seen plants like ones at his place. She tells him that she is being chased by a noble who wants to take her research. She tries to run away, and they send a person to her, so she enters the forest. She asks him how he can tame the animals, but he doesn't even know they are wild. She asks if he could permit her to visit again, but he begs her to stay with him there. He begs her to stay with him forever and says he always had never liked staying with people, and he had always wanted to be alone, but now he is lonely. She mistakes his words for a proposal and asks that they don't know each other. He tells her that they could get to know each other as time goes on, and he is also fine with her being chased. When he realizes she has mistaken his words for a proposal, he indeed proposes to her, and when she accepts, he jumps at her. She tells him to stop claiming they have to take it slowly as they don't know each other yet. The following day, she meets him at the farm and greets him. He says that he didn't know just a good morning could make him that happy. He realizes that she is smaller, and he asks her why. She claims she had become smaller to ensure he doesn't touch her, and she asks if they could plant medicines. He accepts her proposal, and she wonders where they will find seeds. But he tells her that he doesn't need seeds. He proceeds to help her plant the medicines as the episode ends. The next morning, Hiraku wakes up and stretches himself out just before Lu wakes up. When she does, he wonders if vampires did not like mornings, most especially seeing how she acts. However, he is pleased to have her living with him, since she has helped out in all kinds of ways. He recollects a time when she helped him just by using her magic to install lights in the area. At that time, while he is thrilled by this, she was surprised, since it's just a basic magic. Another time, she helped him figure out where salt had been lying all along, unknown to him. She advises him to boil it and get salt out of it. Hearing this, he's shocked to his bones, especially since he had been digging around that area all along and had never noticed it. These two things give him the reason to let Lu stay. When Lu wakes up, she seeks to know what they are going to do that day. In reply, he informs her about his intention to check how the fruit trees are growing. When she hears this, she's excited and promises to join him once she is done washing up. Later on, Hiraku shows her some little orange trees and peach trees he has just transplanted. He does this because he feels they need more time to grow. Furthermore, he considers planting the chestnuts next. And Lu blurts out how eager she is to see how they turn out. Shortly after, while he commends the herb tea Lu makes, he wishes to have green tea. While thinking of the perfect combination for this, his thoughts were interrupted by a sound from afar. Getting there, they meet a girl with wings, pleading to be shown mercy by Hiraku's dogs. Seeing this scene, Hiraku recognizes it as similar to that of Lu when she first arrived. Meanwhile, the girl continues to beg for her life and is eventually saved by Hiraku. When she is released, she immediately uses her magic to make herself whole and clean again. Seeing her do this, Hiraku is amazed. Just then, he turns around to see Lu's reaction to this, but finds her trying to escape. When he calls out to her, the girl immediately recognizes her as the person she had been chasing, happy to have found out where she is hiding. Just then, she asks Lu to stop resisting and come in quietly. At that moment, the dogs attack her once more. Later on, Hiraku invites her to their hut, and she's still left in shock as to the fact that Lu chose to hide in the forest of all places. In reply, Lu lets her know that a lot of things have happened. In the meantime, the lady complains about her recent experience with the dogs, and Lu reveals that she experienced the same thing with the dogs, stating that fighting them is a death sentence. Seeing them talk about this, Hiraku believes they share the same experience. After that, the lady seeks to know who Hiraku is. Almost immediately, Lu states in the midst of a slight contemplation that he is her husband. When she hears this, she's shocked and seeks verification from Hiraku, who concurs. The lady blurted out her surprise since she didn't expect to hear that. Meanwhile, the lady introduces herself as Tia, an angel. When Hiraku seeks to know if her existence as an angel means she serves God, she states that it isn't that important. Just then, Lu describes them as warriors with more muscles than brains. Tia finds this offensive, since they were once objects of worship. Shortly after, Hiraku seeks to know why an angel like her is chasing Lu. In response, she tells him about a bounty on Lu due to the damage she had caused in town when she went on a rampage. Not believing this to be true, Hiraku turns to ask Lu, and she confirms it to be true. To justify her action, she tells him about a noble who kept forcing her to make him medicine and drugs for them. The noble's insistence had led her to teach them what she refers to as a little lesson. Hearing her say this, Tia blurts out the fact that there was nothing little about what she did. She reveals how Lu spends her time researching about medicines and other things once she is bothered. Angrily, Lu demands that she stops making it sound like she has done something like this on multiple occasions, further clarifying that it was just an accident. Regardless of what she has to say, Tia insists that she tainted the honor of the noble, seeking to know if she has any idea how much the bounty on her head is. At that moment, Lu agrees to have gone a little too far in her actions. Hearing her say this, Tia is shocked that she would admit this so easily. Just then, Lu tells Hiraku that she has ended up in the forest because she was running from Tia, agreeing to the fact that Tia is stronger than her. Once again, these statements by Lu make Tia come to the conclusion that she has changed, most especially since she didn't see Lu as the kind of person who would admit to any weakness. On her part, she reveals how she felt weakness firsthand in her encounter with the dogs. Urging her to put everything aside, Lu asks her to live with them, offering to show her around and promising that she will love it here. When they head out, Lu shows her around. However, when she is shown a large spider named Zabuton, she passes out. Seeing her do this, Lu admits to experiencing such a reaction. Just briefly, she wakes up, and Lu invites her to join them since they are about to harvest some crops. Seeing how much the crops mean to her, Tia asks to know if Hiraku planted them all by himself, and he says yes. At that point, Hiraku admits to the fact that they do need another set of hands, and thanks her for being a lifesaver. Hearing him say this, Tia wonders if she would also be doing farm work, since she feels like an angel, such as her, should not be getting her hands dirty. While she says this, Lu drags her as they get started with the cabbages. On her first trial, Tia did a good job. When Hiraku offers her some cabbage to taste, she finds it to be delicious. Later that day, they are all exhausted from harvesting a lot of vegetables. While Tia and Lu make use of their magic to refresh themselves, Hiraku is left wishing he could do magic too. Shortly after, Tia gets to taste some strawberries and she finds them to be so sweet. This makes her come to the realization that farming work is a lot more fulfilling than she expected. When Lu asks if she had fun, she wastes no time in admitting to doing so. Her response makes Lu believe that she has now accepted to live with them, stating that her body wouldn't be able to handle everything alone. Her last statement makes Tia wonder what exactly she means. Time goes by and Tia gets more and more comfortable living with them. When they are together, Lu informs Tia about how the farm work seems to suit her so well. Shortly after, Tia asks Hiraku if they can make more strawberries, but he lets her know how impossible it will be, since they will need more hands to keep up with the harvesting. This makes Tia realize just how much they need more hands. Hearing her say this, Lu tells her to work hard enough to make up the difference, but she feels Lu is slacking. On their way back to the farm, Hiraku is met by the puppies. Seeing them makes him realize just how much their current hut won't be big enough for them, since they seem to be multiplying so much in numbers. This prompted him to build a dog area next to the orchard. After a while, he completed the building of the doghouse and it looked so much like a stable. After doing this, he remembers that he hadn't come up with names for the new puppies. Meanwhile, walking further, he sees Zabuton's children and decides to build a new home, too, for the ones who remain behind after the others follow the wind. While trying to figure this out, Tai comes to inform Hiraku of her intention to leave for some time. However, she promises not to go too far along, after which she flies away. Watching her leave, Hiraku is bothered that she would not return, but Lu assures him that she will. Days later, Tia returns with a group of female elves. When they introduce themselves, it's clear that they are related. Looking at the similarity in their names, after introducing themselves, the eldest among them, Leah, pleads that they are allowed to live there. While Hiraku tries to make a decision, Tia informs him about the sad story of the elves. Apparently, they all used to live in a distant village and had most of their people wiped out in the war with humans. This has caused their race to be scattered, forcing them to wander the land, desperate for a place to settle down and call their home. Just then, Leah narrates how they have been traveling through the woods, and without a place to settle down, which has made repopulation really hard for them. Furthermore, she pleads that he helps them. To help them come up with a decision, Tia informs them that they are excellent workers, begging that he help them. Also, Lu pleads that he does so, since elves like them are known to be very talented. Before Hiraku decides, he informs them about the extra roommates they will have to live with, promising to let them stay if they get along with those roommates. Seeking to know who the roommates are, Lu excitedly shows them Zabuton, and they all pass out, just as Tia did earlier. When they wake up, they're also shown the dogs, and they pass out too. On the other hand, Hiraku tries to come up with a place for the elves to live, especially since the elves had said they wanted to live together. The thought of this leads Hiraku to build them a big house. While building the house, Hiraku realizes just how extremely talented at building they are. Eventually, he is left with doing menial jobs while they construct the house themselves. After 10 days, they successfully built the large house. While others are thrilled at it, Hiraku steps aside as he is determined to learn their technique and admits to learning it. When they all enter the new house, they are excited about how well it is structured. Seeing how happy they all are, Hiraku hopes this can become a home where they can feel safe and at peace. The next day, the elves get to work and seem so happy doing so. However, watching them eat raw garlic, Hiraku thinks they are wild. While sorting out the garlic with Leah, Hiraku is shocked to find out that they use fire and eat meat, as opposed to his notions of elves. While Leah finds his thoughts to be funny, she wonders how one is supposed to live without fire. When he breaks down his thoughts on how they live, she angrily cautions him to stop underestimating them, assuring him that they'd die right away if he tries to live that way in the forest. Meanwhile, she reveals that they intend to do some mining and blacksmithing as a sign of their appreciation for making them live there. Hearing this, Hiraku is surprised that they can do this since he thought dwarves were the only ones capable of such things. As Leah had said, the elves went ahead with the construction of a pot. Seeing this, Hiraku is thrilled. When he wonders how they are able to do this, he is reminded of how long they have spent wandering without a home. Once again, they remind him that the only thing they can't do is settle down and reproduce. Intentionally, Hiraku rises to avoid the second thing as much as they bring it up. Later that day, while they are done with the farm work, Hiraku states how happy he is that they have come to live with them. Just then, he urges them to stop there for the day. Shortly after, the elves demand some wheat flour, which they use to bake some bread. The taste of the bread leaves Hiraku, Tia, and Lu amazed. On the one hand, Hiraku contemplates expanding the wheat field since they can make bread. Later in the night, Tia, Lu, and Leah sit at the dining table, eating and talking about how intriguing and lacking in knowledge he is about things around him. At this moment, Leah talks about how he perceived elves to be, while Tia talks about how he didn't seem to know what angels are. Meanwhile, Hiraku remembers how he hadn't made progress in his building of their waterways. Just then, he decides he will ask the elves for help, concluding that there will be lots of work to do the next day. The next day, Hiraku woke up, ready for the day's work. While he stands ready with his tools, he notices a presence behind him. Turning around, he realizes that it's just Zabuton. Then he seeks to know what is going on. Zabuton shows him a large bee it has just captured. Seeing the bee, Hiraku acknowledges how large it is and wonders what his large spider friend wishes to do with it. When he asks if Zabuton wishes to eat it, it replies negatively. However, it intends to keep the bee as a pet. This Hiraku thinks will be dangerous, but Zabuton assures him that the bee will not fight back, as it is customary for every new resident of the farm. Hiraku builds a small house for the bees next. Surprisingly, the bees built a nest of their own inside the house in just the space of 10 days. While he commends the worker bees for being so busy, he only realizes that they are the only ones with a small size compared to their large-looking queen. Looking at the huge nest the bees have made, Hiraku wonders if they would make honey for him to harvest soon. In order to be able to harvest honey as he wishes to, he considers planting a flower garden nearby the bee house. At this time, his thoughts are interrupted by Tia, who wishes to tell him something, but flees immediately after seeing the large bee nest in the house. Seeing her do this, Hiraku imagines that she must have been stung before. Later that day, Hiraku completes the construction of a large hole in the ground. When he's finished, Leah wonders what it is. Just then, he informs her that it's a reservoir. Furthermore, he reveals his earlier plans of drawing water from the river through a waterway, but he hasn't been able to do it since he had been busy with other things. This innovation sounds impressive to Leah, who goes ahead to ask how far he has gone with the waterway construction. To this, he admits to being stuck as he hasn't progressed far enough. This is due to the fact that he still hasn't figured out what he will make it out of yet. To get her help, he breaks down the entire process. Apparently, there is a lot of distance between the farm and the river. However, Leah asks that they decide what to build the waterway out of first. Just then, Hiraku talks about how he had always imagined waterways to be built out of stone, but she thinks it will be really hard to find stone to work with around the farm. With the idea of using stone out of the way, Hiraku suggests they make the waterway out of wood. As much as Leah acknowledges that they have a lot of wood, she doesn't feel comfortable with the fact that the length of the waterway would cause a lot of leakages. As a last resort, Hiraku decides to use dirt he had gathered to form something as hard as concrete. The dirt happened to be the part he had gotten from digging the reservoir, and this seemed like the perfect use for it. With both of them agreeing to the use of this dirt, they embark on mass production of the concrete waterways. With this equipment, they built an intake gate for the water at the top of the waterfall. After that, they built the foundation of the waterway and placed the water path on it. Since they are better than him at building, Hiraku lets the elves handle the basic foundation work, while he focuses on strengthening the foundation. Due to the assistance rendered by the elves, the construction ended up moving a lot faster than Hiraku had expected it to. Upon completion of the waterways, the water moves smoothly down and into the reservoir, and they are all pleased at the fruit of their hard work. Most especially, they are pleased at the fact that they won't have to climb in or out of the well for water while working every day. Also, one of the elves admits to the fact that the new reservoir would make watering the crops much easier. Fortunately, while walking past the waterway, Hiraku sees a fish bounce out of the water. Seeing this, he is pleased as he assumes that the sudden access to the river would give him the chance to eat fish again. His only problem, however, is figuring out the perfect way to prepare them. This is because he feels the fishes are so normal and easy to catch. Just then, he sees a much larger fish bounce out of the water and almost attack him. Fortunately, he cuts it before it gets the chance to do so. Shortly after, Hiraku grills the fish for food. Seeing the fish on the stick, Tia and Lu identify it as a fish from the Forest of Death. And even the most vicious one at that. This makes them wonder if it is even safe to eat the fish. When Hiraku gets done with the preparation, he offers them a piece, but they decline, stating that he should try it first since he made it. Without much thought, Hiraku grabs a bite of the fish, and it tastes great. Since nothing happened to him after eating it, they are all convinced that it's harmless. At that moment, they are offered a plate each, which they grab and reluctantly grab a bite of the fish. After tasting it, they both acknowledge how delicious it tastes. This prompts the other elves to step out of hiding, demanding their portion. After giving the elves theirs, Hiraku preserves the leftover fish in order to make them fresh enough to serve next time they decide to eat them. Later that day, Hiraku harvests some rice which he had planted, and is surprised to see that it has grown in normal soil. However, he decides to build a rice paddy now that they have easy access to water. To do that, he single-handedly digs the paddy and fills it up with water. Seeing the water in the large hole, the elves assume he has just constructed a pond for fish. Hearing them say this makes Hiraku laugh, but he informs them about his next line of action, which would involve them. For this, he hands them some rice seedlings which they have to get into the water in order to plant. Since they are new to this, he shows them how it's done. And since the elves are fast learners, they grasp it immediately and get it right away. After a while, the rice grows so fast that Hiraku is left wondering what the true cause is. Seeing how well they have grown, Hiraku informs them that it is time to harvest the crops. To make this faster, he employs the help of the elves once again, and they do it swiftly. Staring at the rice hanging out in the open, Leah wonders what they are to do next, and Hiraku informs her that they are waiting for the rice to dry. When the rice dries, the others ask Hiraku what they are to do next, and he suggests that they should thresh it. This helps them separate the rice from its leaves. Then they put the rice through a sieve to get rid of any remaining leaves or plants. After that, they make use of a mortar to remove the husk from the rice, and use a pestle to polish it. These processes seem exhausting to others who think the process takes a lot of work. They wonder if the rice cannot be eaten if all of this is not done. In a brief moment, Hiraku finally gets done with processing the rice, and is excited about the outcome. When Lu and Tia see him like this, they assume it's time to eat the rice. Unfortunately, they are told that it isn't time yet, since the rice has to be cooked. Before doing so, Hiraku directs Lu to set the fire, and she doesn't really understand him. Instead of doing so, she tries to show the full extent of her power, but he calls her to order, demanding just a low flame. After a while, the rice is ready and Hiraku makes it into balls. When he offers Lu and Tia a piece, Tia asks Lu to go first, since she assumes it will not taste as good as he claims. When Lu takes a bite, she nods in satisfaction, allowing Tia to do the same, and the two are thrilled with how delicious it tastes. Looking closely, they discover the fish they had eaten the other day in the rice. Apparently, Hiraku had put it in there since the saltiness of the fish goes well with the rice. With how well the rice tastes, Leah acknowledges the stress of all the hard work that they had done to make the rice. Seeing them enjoy this, Hiraku states that this is the happiest moment as a farmer. Just then, he turns aside to grab a rice ball, but discovers that the tray is empty. Looking around, he realizes that the elves have taken everything due to how tasty it is. Seeing them, he's happy that they all enjoy it. This makes him determined to work harder in order to make more. Without wasting much time, Hiraku gets to planting more rice. After a long and tiring day planting rice seedlings, Hiraku instructs the elves to stop work for the day. One after another, the elves make use of their magical powers to cleanse themselves. This, however, is not a luxury Hiraku can afford. This makes him wish he had a bath he could easily hop in. However, since he has successfully built a waterway, Hiraku decides to build a bath. To do this, he first draws a plan on the ground for Lu, Tia, and Leah to see. Seeing this, the three have no idea what a bath is. After explaining it to them, Hiraku breaks down what he intends to build in each location of the bath. Firstly, he intends to build a furnace to heat the water, then a tub to hold water, and finally a place to wash the body. Also, he considers making a changing room. Seeing this, the three wonder if they can't just wash themselves in the river. But he states that it will not be safe to do so during the winter. Furthermore, he assures them that the baths are great, trying to convince them about how useful it can be. Seeing how desperate he is for a bath, they agree to help him with the construction. Step by step, the elves help Hiraku in constructing the bath by setting up the areas he had outlined. With everything set, Hiraku is faced with the dilemma of where to put wastewater from the bath, since it would contaminate the river. Hearing him sound worried about this, Tia considers them using slimes, since they are known to eat waste products and serve as nature's cleansing machines. Just then, Tia flies away to get some slimes, and shortly after, she returns with a bowl of them. Without wasting much time, Hiraku places some slimes in the purification area and accepts Tia's suggestion to place some in the toilet. While gathering some wood for the furnace, Hiraku sees some mushrooms growing on them. This makes him remember the different opinions of the girls about the mushrooms in the area. He, however, goes ahead with developing a means to make the mushrooms grow more than they have. Meanwhile, they are finally done with the construction of the bath, and Hiraku tasks himself with the responsibility of teaching the rest how to take their bath. He briefs them on the process step by step. However, Tia feels it would be better to show them by doing it herself. Just then, he goes ahead to have a bath and finds himself in the tub. Not long after, the others take off their clothes and join him, not regarding his gender. The next day, Hiraku returns to check on the mushrooms and is thrilled to see how much they have grown. On the other hand, the dogs find 5 new elves and lead them to the settlement. When they introduce themselves, Hiraku realizes how similar they are to Leah's group. Since they would be helpful, Hiraku wastes no time in accepting them. As a sign of appreciation, they decide to reconstruct Hiraku's house. Meanwhile, Hiraku's dog, Kuro, talks about how he met Hiraku. Apparently, he had been attacked by a grappler bear, the king of the forest, and forced to leave after the bear spared him. Also, because they were too injured to stay, this incident led him to find Hiraku, who ended up taking care of him and his female counterpart. Then Hiraku gave them names, after which they went on to bear many children. He's impressed, since his master now has a pack of his own. He is concerned that Hiraku is unaware that they are the Inferno Wolves. However, he thinks everything will be fine. The elves complete the renovation of Hiraku's house, just as they said they would, and this gets him excited. However, he had done a lot of extra work during the building of the house, and had a feeling the house would turn out like that. However, he never expected it to be as good as what he saw. While staring at the house, Lu informs him that she and Tia had helped with the design. Furthermore, Tia informs him that they had made sure the requests of the future residents were granted while building the house. This makes Hiraku wonder what this request is, since he is also a resident of the house. At that moment, Leah suggests that they embark on a tour of the house. Going in, Hiraku is thrilled with how large and similar it is to the elves' main hall. In reply, Leah informs him that it had been built that way to give everyone enough space to hang out. Moving further, Hiraku is led to his room, which he likes at first sight. After that, he is led to a spacious dining table situated across his room, with other spaces in the house, including a kitchen, a store with stoves, a cellar, and underground storage space for food and firewood, and private rooms for Lu and Tia. Seeing their rooms, the two are very pleased, especially since their previous place is now crowded by the elves. On the other hand, while the two admire their rooms, Hiraku sees a room locked with a bolt lock, and wonders what they could possibly have put in there since it had a lock. When he opens it, he sees a large bed meant for couples. Immediately, he closes the door and vows to pretend not to have seen it. After the tour, Lu and Tia seemed very excited about the new house. About to leave, Hiraku sees a large tree beside the house, and he states that it seems like the tree is watching over them. This makes him believe that the house is a really great house. This Leah finds as a compliment. Before she leaves, she tells him to inform her about any part of the house he finds inconvenient during their stay, especially since winter is coming. If there is a need, she promises to fix it immediately. Shortly after, Hiraku places statues of his dogs at the entrance of the house. To him, this makes the house more in good shape than it already was. After the amount of stress they had experienced that day, Lu and Tia were hungry and went to ask Hiraku about what they had been eating that day. In response, Hiraku states that he wishes to make a dish they haven't tried before. He says it is something new called curry. Hearing the name of the dish, Tia acknowledged that she had never heard of it before. However, the fact that he claims he's trying to make it makes them wonder just how difficult the dish is to make. Even though Hiraku admits that mastering the dish takes a lot of work, he states that it can be easy to make. To get the ingredients for making the curry, Hiraku shows them a crop field he had planted a while ago. Seeing it, Lu and Tia are impressed with him. Just then, he stated that he had been working at it little by little. Looking closely, the ladies do not seem to recognize any of the plants. Apparently, he had planted them using the almighty farming tools the elves had made. The tools allow him the chance to grow plants that are really sensitive to seasonal weather. That being said, Hiraku gets to harvesting the needed spices for the curry. To begin, he cuts some cumin. The cumin, however, seems like an already dried flower, but Hiraku makes them understand that all that is needed is the seed that gets left behind after it gets dried up. He states that this spice is most peculiar because of curry's smell. Next, he harvests some turmeric, the main ingredient which gives curry its color. This plant has a very large upper part, but Hiraku states that they only care about the roots. However, they would have to dry it up first. To do so, he employs the services of Tia and Lu, who use their magic to hasten the process. After this, he harvests some coriander seeds, which would have to be ground before use. Next, they harvest some cilantro leaves, which seem to have a potent aroma. When he offers the leaves to the dogs to eat, they run away after smelling them. Seeing this, Tia and Lu are thrilled upon the realization that there is a plant capable of driving off infernal wolves. This discovery, they say, is worthy of research. To cap it all, they harvest some black pepper and cayenne peppers. After getting all the spices he needs, Hiraku turns around to discover that the girls have left him all alone. This makes him remember that he had heard about girls finding men who make their own curry, starting with the spices to be pains in the ass. He, however, wonders if that's true. With all the spices placed on the table, Hiraku is ready to make some curry. However, he is surprised to find just Leah there to help him. However, she informs him that they are busy with research on a supposed all-powerful magical protection talisman. This would definitely be associated with what they had seen earlier, which involved how the plant scared the infernal wolves away. While Hiraku has no idea what they are doing, he goes ahead with the cooking. Step by step, he and Leah prepare the meal, and he uses the opportunity to explain the entire process to her. While they cook, some elves and dogs are drawn by the smell of the spices and hang around, watching from a distance. With the curry now on fire, Hiraku has a feeling that something is missing. Thinking carefully, he remembers that he had put some naan on the fire earlier. However, they have now gotten burned. While he contemplates on either cooking something else or cooking some rice, he comes to the realization that naan goes better with curry. Just then, he decides to make some more naan. Together with Leah, they prepare the dough for naan. Meanwhile, Lu and Tia finally finish up their supposed research and are heading back when they perceive the smell of something appetizing. They, however, see some elves and dogs looking through the bushes at the origin of the appealing smell. This reminded Tia of how hungry she was. On the other hand, Hiraku and Leah are done with preparing the naan, and only wait a moment for the curry to be made. When the curry is ready, everyone is seated at the dining table, but are reluctant about trying this new meal, since it seems to have a strange color. As much as Hiraku tries to convince them with his words to try it out, they remain reluctant. Not until he tastes it himself and blurts out how nice it tastes. Just then, Lu and Tia follow and state how addicting the spices could turn out to be. This prompts the others to taste it, and they marvel at how unique it tastes. Without wasting much time, they all head to the pot to scoop some curry for themselves. When Hiraku sees them do this, he doesn't want the incident with the rice balls to repeat itself, and begs them to leave some for him. As part of their research, Lu and Tia offer the wolves some curry, but they run away after smelling it. This validates the belief that the plant works to repel wolves. After everyone has eaten, Hiraku is pleased that they all love it. On the other hand, they all ate their fill and hope to try it again sometime. Meanwhile, with winter drawing near, Hiraku makes plans for their survival. Since they would be spending most of their time in the house, he intends to finish up winter preparations before winter comes. Firstly, he makes sure they wouldn't lack firewood by storing a large quantity in the underground storage of the house. After that, he offers Zabuton some potatoes in exchange for extra blankets to keep them warm. Meanwhile, Leah and the elves get busy with other projects that will help them in the winter. On the other hand, Lee and Tia have been tasked with the preservation of food for the winter. They season the meat and smoke it, after which they dry it. Also, since the dogs won't be able to hunt in the winter, Hiraku makes sure they do so now to enable them to stock up as much meat as possible. On his part, Hiraku works on creating a means for them to preserve vegetables. Fortunately, he comes up with a box which can be used for the purpose. Apparently, the vegetable would be placed in it and covered in a sheet, which would then receive snow, giving off the required cold temperature the vegetables would need to survive. Meanwhile, watching the others use magic makes Hiraku wish once more that he could. This time, he tries it out and is disappointed at the obvious outcome. Even though he didn't expect anything different to happen, he felt that trying would probably give him a different outcome. Well, it didn't work. Later that night, he seeks Leah's guidance in learning magic. He claims to have always tried to replicate their actions, but didn't find it as easy as they made it seem. She, however, lets him know that they had always tried to replicate Tia's, whose magic is so powerful that she is able to summon golems. This, she claims, is something that not everyone with magic can do. While Hiraku finds her to be extraordinary, Leah feels bad that he doesn't consider her the same way. Noticing this, he commends Leah and the elves for their efforts around the settlement so far. Furthermore, he states that they have been more useful than him, who only spends his time planting flowers and doing menial jobs. In reply, she informs him that he is the most amazing one amongst them, because he has been surviving in this place alone for a long time. Hearing these words from Leah gives Hiraku the needed validation he seeks. Days after, winter arrives, and the snow began to fall. Since they are unable to leave the house, Hiraku crafts out some indoor games to keep themselves busy. First, he built a chest and mahjong set. Since they have no idea about how the game is played, Hiraku explains the details of the mahjong game to Lu and Tia. Hearing the rules, Lu thinks it's so simple and will be no fun. However, Tia thinks otherwise, and the two are forced to challenge themselves. While they play, it is obvious that Tia will win the game, and since Lu doesn't intend to lose squarely, she flips the board claiming her hand flipped. Shockingly, Tia resets the game with her magic, giving Lu no excuse but to face her loss squarely. In another room, Kuro teaches an elf how to play the mahjong game, and this surprises Hiraku. Also, two dogs spend their time playing the game of chess. Even though they seem cute, Hiraku is worried since he can sense a terrifying energy from them. He, however, resolves to not ever challenge them in a game. Just then, Lu challenges one of the dogs to a game and is utterly defeated. When they play a game of 4, Hiraku assumes he can get his revenge on Kuro by winning, but ends up being the sore loser. Furthermore, since playing board games might not be good for their health, Hiraku builds a mini bowling set. However, on his first shot, it seems like he's pretty good, as he brings down 8 figures with 2 left. Then on the second trial, he successfully brings the 2 down. After that, Lu tries it out and successfully brings 10 of the figures down in one try. Fortunately, it seems to be her first win so far, but not the same for Hiraku, who seems to have better luck creating the games than actually playing them. With days passing, they are all able to endure the winter and are met by the warm atmosphere that accompanies spring. When they wake up, Hiraku suggests that they plant some crops and get Zabuton to wake up from her hibernation. Shortly after, they hear a signal from afar, signifying the arrival of an unknown being. Running in that direction, Hiraku sees a large-looking monster approaching them and assumes it's a dragon. On seeing it, Tia discovers that it is actually a wyvern. Hearing her say this, Lu cannot seem to believe it. Following Zabuton's warning taps, Hiraku, Ru, and Tia immediately run in the direction of the intruder, Up in the sky flying towards them, they can see a large red wyvern. The wyvern flaps its wings and gives a loud roar over the forest. Hiraku had never expected a monster like that to show up, and he hopes that maybe it will just ignore them and pass through. Unfortunately, the wyvern instantly compresses mana in its mouth and prepares itself to breathe fire. Lu and Tia quickly act and put a strong barrier over the farm. The wyvern's breath attack coming at them was blocked, but small fires rain down and start burning the farm. The elves rapidly jump into action to put out the fire. Lu and Tia are considering if they should attack the wyvern, but Lu isn't sure if they can even pierce the wyvern's barriers. Hiraku is worriedly looking around thinking about what they should do. With the elves putting out fires and the wyvern flying over them, he wonders if they should try to escape into the forest, but the wyvern can just follow them from the sky. He realizes that his only choice is to drive the wyvern away, but how? While thinking that he has to protect everyone, the magic omnipotent farming tool suddenly materializes in his hand in the shape of a spear. He starts wondering how that ever happened, but he has no time to think about it. He just decides to take the power and fully use it. With that, he powerfully throws the spear at the flying wyvern. The spear flew straight and true toward the wyvern, but the wyvern creates a 3-layered barrier to protect itself. The spear and the barrier clash in a brilliant show of power, but the spear manages to break through the 3 barriers and hit the wyvern at its wing, burning it away. Back in the ground, Ru and Tia cannot believe what happened. The tool turns to Hiraku's hand and he repeats the process. He again changes it into a spear and throws it at the wyvern. The spear goes straight through its chest and the wyvern falls down to the forest below. While walking to the wyvern's crash site, Ria reports to Hiraku that they managed to put out the fires. There was some damage to the crop fields, but all of the buildings were fine. Meanwhile, they finally reach the dead wyvern's corpse. He asks the others if there are more of those creatures, and Lu explains that there are, but running into one as large as the one that attacked them is a very rare occurrence. Hiraku wonders if someone might have sent the wyvern to specifically attack them, but Tia points out that if someone does manage to command a wyvern, they wouldn't send such a rare and valuable creature off on its own, so the wyvern most probably is just a wild one. As his last question, Hiraku asks the girls if they can eat the wyvern. That afternoon, Hiraku cooks the wyvern meat into different delicacies. He was able to create a wyvern round steak grilled with spices. As for the breast meat, he wrapped it in leaves and steamed it. The tail meat, meanwhile, was simmered into a stew with various vegetables. Everyone starts eating and they all find the food very delicious. While eating, Lu curiously asks Tia if she can block an attack from the spear, like the one Hiraku used earlier, and Tia answered that she absolutely couldn't. The attack was powerful enough to pierce through a triple-layered barrier and blow a hole through a wyvern's chest. The 2 girls realized that they were very lucky that Kuro and the dogs were the only ones that they ran into first when they came here, not Hiraku and his spear. Hiraku notices the 2 girls talking and asks them if they found a bone or something, and the girls immediately change the topic. At that same moment, in the demonic kingdom of Galgarado, inside the Demon Lord's castle, 3 individuals are having a meeting. They are 3 of the Demon Lord's 4 great generals, Bizel, Randan, and Gratz. They cannot believe the report they have just received of a wyvern being killed. A wyvern drawing near would have immediately required them to mobilize their entire military force, but someone managed to kill it with just 2 hits. They instantly realize they cannot fight someone like that. Bizel reminds them as generals they have to handle the situation before fear and panic spreads among their citizens. Randan immediately suggests an idea. They should resign. Elsewhere in the Gatekeeper Dragons, the dragon Drime is talking with a human, Gucci. They have just witnessed the fight between the human and the dragon, and Drime asks Gucci what would happen if he received such an attack from the spear. Gucci honestly tells him that it would have cleanly speared through him. He then tells the dragon that it would be foolish for them to attack, and Drime agrees. The next day, Hiraku is quietly staring at his vineyard. The wyvern meat was every bit as delicious as it was said to be, but he felt like there was still one thing missing from the meal. The girls then arrive and Hiraku tells them that it's time for them to create alcohol. If they are going to make alcohol out of grapes, then it's going to be wine. Wine already existed in this world, so everyone was excited about making it. The elves quickly harvested all the grapes in the vineyard and gathered them in large baskets. Now all that's left is to squish them and let them ferment. To do that, Hiraku makes a contraption where they put all the grapes and the girls can crush it with their feet. The girls are hesitant to stomp on something that they're going to drink, but Hiraku encourages them from below the machine, where he is waiting to gather the juices. He had prepared barrels with the high elf Lalasha's help, making the containers watertight. Tia and Ria hesitantly step on the grapes and start crushing them. Hiraku instructs them to move in a circular motion around the thing, but Tia slips and falls down on Ria, covering them both in juices. After getting up, Tia suggests that they could probably stomp easier if they have a way to be in rhythm. That way, all their movements will be in sync. One of the elves proposes a song that they used to sing in their village while working together. They all sing the song together, and the two girls stomping the grapes follow the beat of the songs. Thanks to their new rhythm, they are able to stomp in sync around the thing, and juice continuously flows out to the barrels. Tia invites Lu to join them, and Lu happily drags Hiraku along. By late afternoon, they were able to finish crushing all the grapes and collect their juices. Now, the yeast on the skin of the grapes should ferment them. Hiraku wonders if they made too much since they were able to collect 16 barrels of juices. But Lu points out that they are surely just going to drink it all anyway. Meanwhile, God is kneeling in front of the goddess of agriculture and is asking for forgiveness. After all, they have just watched Hiraku happily living his life. However, the goddess reminds God that he mistakenly punished an innocent human soul, sneakily tried to save him, and ended up sending him to the forest of death. On top of that, he gave the human a replica of the Holy Lance Grime. God tries to make excuses and tells the goddess that the human is only using the replica as a farming tool. The goddess points out that the replica should have drained the Hiraku of his life force, but God explains that he also gave Hiraku super fast recovery abilities, meaning that he recovers everything the replica sucks out. Lastly, the goddess shakes in anger since her statue turned out to be an old man. As punishment, she makes his father, the god, to sit on his knees for 300 years. Back on the farm, Zabuton's warning bell rings again, and Hiraku checks it out armed with his spear. To his surprise, it was a strange little girl wrapped up in Zabuton's webs. Lu notices the girl and realizes that it's her little sister, Flora. A little while later, Flora is now dressed and explaining why she was in the forest, after she heard that Lu was being chased by the angel Tia. She followed her all the way there. Since she's already there, Hiraku invites her to stay with them for a while. Flora accepts his offer, but she can't believe Hiraku is her sister's husband. Lu explains that Hiraku is actually the one in charge, the master of the Inferno Wolves, and he even took down a wyvern. Flora finally understands her sister, and she prostrates herself in front of Hiraku as an apology. Meanwhile, this is the first time Hiraku learns that Kuro and his ilk are actually Inferno Wolves. Kuro demonstrates the Inferno in their names by blowing fire out of his mouth. Afterward, they feed Flora the various delicacies they have cooked at the farm. She immediately takes a liking to tofu, the soft white stuff made from soybeans. Hiraku then proceeds to explain that he actually wants to cook miso and soy sauce, which are also both made from fermented soybeans. It seems that in this world, fermented foods like wine and cheese exist. However, people aren't aware of the microorganisms that cause the fermentation. Flora immediately starts taking down notes after hearing Hiraku's explanation. Hiraku recognizes that, just like Lu, Flora seems to be very passionate about her research. After staying for a few days, Flora leaves, stating that she'll bring the wonders of miso and soy sauce to the world. After 1 month, she finally returns with an army of maids and some animals, and the representatives of the maids introduces herself and asks Hiraku for some work. Meanwhile, Hiraku appreciates the cows Flora brought along since they can now make butter and cheese. Meanwhile, Tia, who is watching the proceedings, suddenly realizes that everyone seems to be in a group. The vampires now have a lot of maids. There are also a lot of elves. The wolves have a pack, and even the spiders aren't alone. Meanwhile, she's all by herself. Tia instantly tells Hiraku that she'll be gone for a few days and flies away. When she returns, she now has her underlings with her. There are 3 angels, Gran Maria, Kudel, and Corone. as well as a group of lizard men with Daga as their leader. She also brought some chickens so they can have eggs. The maids quickly take over the chores on the farm. Hiraku notices that they were just eating simple dishes like boiled potatoes, so he teaches them different cooking methods. The maids were strong thanks to their race being ogres, and also quick learners, being able to serve him food after teaching them how to cook. As for the angels, Tia orders them to be the guards around the forest so that incidents like the wyvern showing up won't easily happen again. The lizard men become the ones in charge of all the laborious work outdoors. Meanwhile, Ria had gathered all the remaining elves in the forest and brought them there to help. Hiraku asks why she just brought girl elves, but Ria explains that the men weren't able to survive. Nevertheless, they plan to start rebuilding their population. Hiraku cheers them on and decides not to ask how they plan to do it. A few days later, Hiraku gathers the representatives of everyone for a meeting. He wants to come up with a name for their place. Before it was just his hut and some fields, but now they are almost like a village. Lu suggests that they should name it after the founder, but Hiraku doesn't really like the names Hiraku Village or Machio Town. The maid Anne suggests naming it after the forest, but Hiraku doesn't exactly know the name of the forest. After learning that it's called the Forest of Death, he also immediately rejects the name Village of Death. The spider Zabuton then raises her head and points at the door, prompting Hiraku to open it. Upon opening the door, Hiraku gazes at the giant tree outside. With that, he decides to name the place the Great Tree Village. That night, in front of a great bonfire, Hiraku announces their new name, and in celebration, they are holding a party. It would also be the debut of their new drink, the first batch of wine made in the Great Tree Village. Everyone starts chanting "Mayor" at Hiraku, and he reminds them that that's something they need to decide later together. The chants, however, didn't stop, and Lu and Tia also voiced their support for him. Left with no choice, Hiraku accepts the position and happily cheers with them. The party then commences with everyone eating, drinking, and dancing together. Later, a drunk Tia notices Hiraku quietly watching them and invites him to sit beside her. She asks him if he's okay, and he just admits that he's so happy that everything feels like a dream. The two toast their new village and Hiraku watches everyone in celebration. The number of the people in the settlement increased again between winter and summer. Due to this, the villagers collectively decided to call their new community the Great Tree Village, and they chose Hiraku as the mayor. As the mayor, Hiraku maintains his daily routine amongst the people like everyone else. On that day, Hiraku receives a message from a flying girl informing him that a messenger from the demonic kingdom has arrived in their community. Though he accompanies the girl to receive the visitor, he is nervous because it is his first task as a mayor. The messenger from the demonic kingdom steps forward and introduces himself as Beezle. Hiraku equally introduces himself, and Beezle examines him from head to toe. Beezle stretches his hand and a box appears to his outstretched hand in a dazzle of green light. Everyone draws closer to see, and he hands it to Hiraku as a gift in commemoration of their new acquaintance. Hiraku receives it with thanks and passes it on to one of his people. Beezle informs Hiraku that the demon lord would like to know the status of their new settlement. Earlier, Hiraku and his people had thought that no particular person owned the land and therefore created their settlement there. But they understood that it may be under the authority of the demon lord. As a sign of taking up his first responsibility, Hiraku thinks for a moment and proffers that if the demon lord is willing to have them stay on his land, they will pay an annual tax of 10% to him, which will be remitted before every winter. But the tax will be restricted to only things grown on the field and does not involve the milk, eggs, honey, or alcohol that his people will produce. Hiraku volunteers a trade negotiation that will happen if the demon lord likes any of their products. After signing the contract, Hiraku feels that he was too uptight with the negotiation and offers Beezle a parting gift to go home with. Afterwards, he asked his close associate if he had done the matter properly, and they assured him that he had done well. Everyone gives their opinion to him and commends him for the good decision of having them come to their place to get the produce every year, which will put their community under the protection of the demon lord and equally make them get official recognition from the demonic kingdom. Besides, by giving them annual payments, the demonic kingdom will not be able to fully monitor all their produce. The people of the community are excited about the gift from Beezle, which is a potent medicine that works on an injury if a person drinks or directly applies it to the injury. Back at the demonic kingdom, the 4 generals of the demon lord, including Bezel, discuss his mission to the Great Tree Village, and he recounts the details of his meeting with the people. The 4 generals are suspicious of their motives and how easily they submitted to their military force. But Bezel informs them that he had no choice but to agree to the proposal because the vampire princess and the angel of annihilation were present at the meeting. The generals exclaim in disbelief that the great sage Lulusi and the strongest of all angels reside amongst the new settlers. But Bezel adds that they have a trio of killer angels, an army of elves, and much more. At the meeting, Bezel understood that his refusal of the proposal might lead them to become enemies with such great force, which made him accept the offer without hesitation. He presents the parting gift to the other generals, who are still trying to process the information he has just given them. While some suggest that they should present the gift to the demon lord to hear his opinion, Bezel examines the cloth wrapping the gift of fruit, which is from a great spider. Randon, one of the generals, instantly resigns from his position because of the information about the strength of the Great Tree community and their new findings. Back at the Great Tree Village, a dragon lands among them and introduces himself as Draim, the one true ruler of the dragons. His human assistant presents a gift of swords to Hiraku and his people as a way of giving them a formal welcome to the place. He explains that Draim's lair is south of their settlement, which is quite far from the Great Tree Village, but they wanted to pay a formal visit to them. Hiraku appreciates the gesture but regrets his inability to invite them inside his house due to Draim's size. Draim's assistant communicates Hiraku's desires to him, and he changes into his human form to make him smaller. In Hiraku's tent, Draim is overjoyed at the warm reception and refuses to leave for home, but his assistant objects to that as their kingdom will be vulnerable without its leader. Draim objects that he can counter any attack from Hiraku's place, but finally agrees to leave. After much persuasion from his servant, Hiraku offers them parting gifts, which makes Draim very happy. Outside, he changes into his large dragon form and flies away. After their departure, Hiraku calls a meeting with his close companions and informs them that they should build a great guest house to receive visitors, as he is neither comfortable with receiving them outside nor in their houses. They agreed to build a house fit for the 30 people as the guest area. The work began, and everyone joined hands together to build the guest house. Hiraku assigns roles to everyone, consisting of how to defend the community, alerting everyone of a guest, greeting and receiving visitors, and people in charge of taking care of the guests. To avoid enemies disguised as visitors, Hiraku follows the advice of his people and adds several people to the welcome party, while advising his people to rest even while guarding against attacks. After making all these supposedly needed preparations, they got put to use sooner than Hiraku had expected. Later that day, they are visited by a group of beastmen led by Garf, who claims they are from a place in the mountains called Howling Village. As a reason for coming, he states that they want to establish a relationship with Hiraku's people. Hearing him say this, Lu steps up to handle the negotiations. While she acknowledges that their journey might have been a rough one, she welcomes them into the Great Tree Village. She offers to take them to the guest house, but asks if all of them in the group are present. While Garf confirms that this is all of them, she threatens to treat the others who they find as enemies. Hearing her say this, Hiraku wonders what she's talking about. Just then, the Inferno Wolves fish out some of them who had been hiding. Seeing that his men have been found out, Garf apologizes on their behalf, stating that they are stragglers. This makes Lu mockingly advise him to always make sure his men are complete. After that, she threatens them to behave themselves while in the village. When they agree to do so, she leads them to the guest house. On getting to the guest house, they are greeted by many maids and are led to dinner. After placing them there, Tia locks the door. Watching her do this, Hiraku is bothered, mostly because this feels like she is trapping enemies rather than welcoming guests. To make him understand her actions, Tia reminds Hiraku of the fact that every visitor they have had come through with gifts. As much as she thinks they aren't friendly, she isn't so sure and wishes to find a way to prove her thoughts. She believes they shouldn't get the normal treatment since they didn't follow the normal procedure. Furthermore, the fact that they had left 2 of their men in the woods earlier bothers her. Amidst this, Hiraku seeks to know if Kudal and the other girls had spotted the troops. Tia reveals that they might have noticed them but decided that they weren't a threat. Due to this, she intends to punish them later. However, when Hiraku pleads on their behalf, she promises to go easy on them. Later that day, Hiraku goes to the kitchen to check on the food for their new visitor. Unfortunately, he meets something below the standard of what they would normally serve their visitors. Seeing how he reacts, the cook points out his assumption. When he agrees to this, she reveals that there is a difference between guests who brought a sword and those who brought nothing. This makes Hiraku understand the reason for the ill treatment of the men. On the other hand, he is surprised to see that they haven't been served any wine and points it out. Meanwhile, when the men eat their food, Hiraku feels bad that they have to eat something meager. Tia, however, cautions him to ignore such emotions. Furthermore, she points out that the men are supposed to be here for important negotiations, but have instead not stated why they are here. This prompts them to be resolute about finding out why. Meanwhile, even though every one of them didn't want the visitors to be given any wine, Hiraku insists that they be given some. This action makes him very happy. Even though they are only allowed to take 2 cups each, he is happy that they get to enjoy themselves. Also, he's determined to show them kindness until it is proven that they are really enemies. With this in mind, he decides to find out why they have come to the village. Before asking them that, he seeks to know more about Howling Village. In response, he is told that it has been around for 1,000 years. Also, the Howling Village is divided into 5 small villages, and most of the population are beastmen. Apparently, the people of Howling Village make a living from mining and hunting. Even though they had earlier traded with another village, they had experienced some recent trouble. This caused the trading between them to be unstable. This happens to be the reason why the beastmen have come to meet Hiraku. Amidst all of this, Hiraku wonders how they found out about the existence of the village. In response, they state that they had heard about it from one of the demon response people. At that moment, one of the beastmen who had been caught hiding expresses his satisfaction at being caught. This is due to the kind of food he had been served, which he would have regretted missing. Hearing him say this, Tia asks why he was hiding. In response, he states that they had been hiding because they had to be on guard when coming to a new place, most especially since some needed to return to the village. Watching Tia ask questions and receive these answers gets Hiraku thrilled. With this, he thinks she is doing a great job at gathering the information they need. After a while, it became a fact that the beastmen had come to establish trade with them. For their trade, Garf suggests they exchange physical goods since they lack currency for trading. However, the idea of a currency remains in Hiraku's thoughts as he decides to create that later. Garf proposes that he wishes to open a market in the 2 villages and wishes for them to trade in his. He states that it's hard for them to carry the heavy goods they have brought back to their village. He, however, asks Hiraku if they are able to navigate the forest easily. With this question, Hiraku considers using dogs as a means of transport. With that thought in mind, he asks Garf what they intend to trade with. Just then, Garf shows him some silverware, glass and metalworks made from the ore they have mined. Seeing them gets Hiraku excited as he wishes to have them all. In exchange for these, Garf suggests that they be given foodstuff. Immediately, Hiraku accepts their terms and promises to provide them with food crops they need. With the negotiation ended, Hiraku bids the beastmen farewell. Before leaving, Garf apologizes for not coming with gifts since he didn't know anything like that existed, most especially since his village has no custom like that. He, however, apologizes in advance for not being able to provide an expensive gift, since their village is poor. To this, Hiraku assures him that the thought put into the gift matters its worth. Hearing this, Garf is happy. On the bright side, Hiraku seeks the help of Drime to transport his people to the Howling Village in exchange for wine. Although the beastmen were reluctant about trying what Tia had brought to be sold to them, they ended up with it after being offered free samples. Also, Tia informs Hiraku about the 20 people who have been showing interest in living in his village. However, they are all female. As a condition, he states that at least 2 young men be added. When the new settlers arrive, Hiraku is surprised to see that they had brought 3 male children instead of the young men he had asked for. He, however, believes they will be of help to him in a few years. The beastmen from the Howling Village have just arrived, as a young man tells them to ask Lamulius if they ever need anything. He had asked them to ask Lamulius if they needed any help because she holds the position of the house manager, and she could obviously tend to their needs. Lamulius greets them as they all reply formally. However, the young man tells them that there is absolutely no reason to be formal, as they should make themselves comfortable in any possible way that they can. The young man affirms that they thought that they would be treated horribly when they arrived. However, their intention was nothing close to that, as they were free to make themselves comfortable. They obey the instructions as they no longer seem to appear as strangers on the island. However, something is noticed with the little beings, as it appears that although they are delighted and comfortable with the environment, they seem to faint often, and something needs to be done about that quickly. Later that day, the young man and everyone are in a serene garden, where there is maximum comfort, and the air that blows in the garden is fresh and soothing. There are different people who do their magic. Some sets of people are seen practicing with water, while some are trying a few other techniques. The young man is rather surprised that it appears that he is probably the only one without magical power. A lady who seems like someone of his age cheers him up after seeing that he feels segregated. Although she had told him that everyone possesses a magic of their own, she is quick to tell him again that he is apparently not the only one without magic. After a while, some sets of children come to tease him as they want to hang around him. He is scared that they might display a sense of magic which can project him as useless. They are to carry out the task with the use of apples. The lady quickly tries to dismiss them after seeing the insecurities they seem to bring to the young man's mind. In the process of doing this, they are interrupted by the report that two beasts seem to be fighting on one side of the island. They had heard a noise that was enough to be mistaken for an earthquake. They never thought it could be two animals fighting. It appeared to be a grappler bear and a bloody viper. The viper must be really huge for the ground to shake that much. The fight is happening in the northern area of the forest, and they can feel the ground of their part of the forest, which is far from the northern part of the forest. The girl that had come to give the report states that the fight must be stopped immediately, as it might affect the well-being of people who reside in the forest. They immediately get ready to get rid of the havoc that seems to have struck the forest. The young man, who is usually referred to as the mayor, gets on the lady who had come to report the incident as they dive into the sky. They did not journey to the battle scene on foot because it would definitely take time to save the forest. They appear at the scene in no time, as they are both shocked to see how big the viper and the bear are. The mayor had spoken earlier about eating animals in the forest area, but they had not taken him seriously. He instructs the girl to dive into the fight scene quickly. She's reluctant at first because she's convinced that they will eventually get hurt. However, it is very important that she obeys her master as she dives into the fight scene immediately. The mayor slashes through these animals without mercy as they appear dead after the whole ordeal. She is shocked that he actually means to cook and eat them. They transport the big animal home as he uses their wine and alcohol to prepare a delicacy that seems weird to everyone at first. He cajoles every one of them to taste the animals as they really appear tasty. He had fried the viper and it tasted like chicken. They eventually try it, only to also love the taste. They had more to eat as the meal was really delicious. Later that day, the mayor visits Flora's building to get supplements to prevent the leftover meal from getting spoiled. He had gone to ask if she had a substance for preventing microorganisms from destroying the food. She tenders a food preservative to him as he inquires to know about the recipe he had told her to try out. She had a bad report as she stated that she had tried her best to make the food, and despite her hard work, all her efforts proved abortive. He had gone straight to the poultry to get eggs as he decided to prepare it right in her presence. They mixed a lot of ingredients alongside the eggs and mayonnaise. She tastes it without baking it or cooking it, as he warns her that it's dangerous to her body's system. She was delighted to see him explain to her that the meal was different and delicious. They are interrupted by the unannounced visit for a few men who are from a different country. They seem wild and their beards are very full. However, their approach seems genuine and very kind. The mayor ushers them in as they relay their reasons for the visit. They had hoped that they could get a large quantity of alcohol from them, as they had heard that their people produce alcohol. The people alongside the younger mayor, however, refuse to give their alcohol to them, as they think it's of very great value. They settle down with them and promise to make them more alcohol from their plants. They almost did not believe, as they wondered with themselves if this was truly possible. The men decided to try out the experiment as the mayor remembers trying it in his science class while he was younger. They eventually produce a substance that is licked into a cup for the people to taste. The mayor exclaims after drinking a little, as he affirms that the alcohol is rather sharp than normal. The men only laugh, affirming that he is a lightweight drinker, as they drink alcohol themselves. People are very happy that they have found someone to give them alcohol, which will keep their business and fame. They make merry as they throw a mini party. Everyone is delighted, and a large number of people become drunk due to the intense intake of sharp alcohol. The mayor is alone in the field as he hears a sound that jolts him to reality. The sound seemed to be very familiar with the one that they heard while the bear and the large viper were in combat. It is, however, different this time, as the combat seems to be happening in the sky. He looks up only to see two large dragons facing each other. The very large one joins them later as they begin to attack each other, hence wreaking great havoc in the forest. He becomes really furious as he vows never to let them off this time. They must pay for their atrocities as far as he is concerned. He begins to attack the dragon as he shoots one of the dragons, who quickly escapes the attack, after seeing how dangerous and deadly the mayor's attack can be. It appears to be more like a threat to their well-being. After the mayor has seen that the dragon had dodged the attack, he becomes more furious as he rekindles the fire of his attack. He is prepared to eliminate them this time with nobody to intervene. Just as he's about to strike them with a type of magic, a young boy who is also a dragon, but he is in human form, quickly interrupts them, as he states that those are his uncle and his family. They all return to their human forms as they try to settle their differences on land and without their dragon form, which makes the intensity of the fight quite decreased. They accuse the father of always drinking every time and also pin it on him that he is having an affair. He denies quickly, stating that he had always gone to bring them gifts to the house, clearing their insecurities. The mayor is happy that they seem to be getting along well, without any force, as the father tells them to apologize to the mayor immediately for causing him a lot of trouble. They apologize as the mayor exits their presence. The father states that he had come to observe the environment as the fight was just camouflage. They had never thought that there could be someone who was more powerful than the dragon. In order for them to feel safe and protected, the mother orders her daughter to stay in the forest and observe the people and also keep them safe. Her father had interrupted her mother while she was dishing out the instructions, but she ignored him as she had already made her mind up. They all return except their daughter. They had told the mayor to assign her to a particular job to keep her very busy as she gets really busy. However, during the course of her stay, they find out that the wolves and even the other animals have been suddenly scared of the dragon ever since she had joined them. This bothers the mayor as he tries to see if there are other sectors that she can function in which would keep her away from the animals. She had been taken to their restaurant to work as she seemed to not fit into any other sector. However, a man named Bezel, who rules a different country, has come to get foodstuff from their store, as he is shocked to find out that a dragon now works for them as their attendant. He stares at the dragon in awe and disbelief. What now? Would he get eaten? Is it even right for a dragon to be an attendant with her horns and scary tail? All these questions run through his head as he keeps affirming everything she seems to have said. He no longer has a decision of his own as he's unsure of what to say or buy. He ends up buying everything she has suggested against his own will, just because he's scared of her and wants to do everything possible to get out of her sight. He eventually meets the mayor, who asks him to count everything he has gotten, but he declines as he is close to wetting his pants. He returned to his town immediately. On getting to his town, he summons his chiefs and tells them about the new developments of the village. They now have a full military force for all they care, and an attack is going to be staged against them soon. The question of their success or failure strikes them immediately. He dismisses them after making up his mind to send a spy to their town, who will give him an appropriate report of everything that is happening in the village. Later that evening, he summons his only daughter as he states that he is sending her off as a spy to a small town. The young girl did not decline as she would go on the mission since it was her father. The very next day, she meets the Lady Dragon on arriving to the town. Her reception was very warm, as she did not know her true intention. Bezel's daughter, however, is not as timid as her father, as she kept asking questions about the environment and people that reside in the environment. Later that day, she sees the other wild beasts and the strong dwarves that are in the town. She accesses them quickly, as it comes to her knowledge that they will hardly be able to defeat them. They seem really strong and unique. It will only take a very powerful force to wipe them out, or even create a slight threat. She goes to sit somewhere in the forest as she settles down to analyze the data she had gathered earlier. She meets with the mayor, whom she underestimates, seeing that he is an ordinary human. However, her analysis is totally wrong as she inquires about him. The dragon girl states that he had enough strength to even defeat her mother. The girl is shocked as she begins to accord him more respect. They appeared strange to the mayor because she was not like that on their first meeting. He had gathered all the information about her and was aware that she would be staying in their town for a period of time. Hiraku informs the other demons about slime and how they can multiply and are very harmless. A red slime suddenly drank the entire barrel of alcohol that was kept in the village. The demon girls suddenly become very surprised, seeing that the slime drank an entire barrel of alcohol, and suggested that it be punished for the offense committed. As a result of that, they had a trial for the first time in the history of the village and decided that the slime was guilty of the offense it committed. The girls began to come up with severe punishments, like burning the slime. While some had pity for the poor thing, the mayor then suggested that the girls do away with such crazy ideas because he feels bad for the little slime. They begin to challenge the mayor because he's always so soft, and they try to persuade him to punish the slime. One of the girls suddenly informs them that if they punish the slime, it does not mean it knows what it is being punished for, which makes them see her point. They all decide to let it go, and the slime continues to show up at their events and becomes acquitted of them. The next day, the mayor sits under a tree and begins to admire how the season has been and gathers the results of the planting he got towards the end of the season. And he suddenly notices how hungry he is and quickly goes to prepare some food to eat. At the dinner, the mayor has prepared a nice meal for the girls, and they all begin to eat as they enjoy how good the mayor is at cooking. The mayor suddenly talks about how the meal would taste better if they had seafood. The girls become more attentive and ask him what seafood is because they really want him to prepare a very nice meal for them. The mayor then lists out some items he was talking about, and the girls begin to talk about and gather information about them. One of the girls quickly suggests a city which has a port where they can begin to look for those items for the village. She also informs them that the village is also known for trading and buying goods, and that they will certainly get the type of seafood the mayor is talking about. The girls quickly head out as they divide themselves on who will undergo different tasks as they head out. Hiraku suddenly becomes amazed at how motivated the girls are to work anytime it comes to matters of food, as he stares at them as they all fly away, but he's so happy to know that they're all enjoying his cooking. 3 days later, the girls who set out returned and they came with a man named Michael. He is a merchant from the city of Shashato in the demonic kingdom. Michael is the president of the Gorun company, and he greets Hiraku, the mayor of the village. Michael then shows the girls and the mayor the products he brought all the way from his city, which makes them all amazed at what they saw. Michael also apologizes for not coming back with the seaweed he asked for because his men do not return with them. Instead, they throw them back into the ocean, but promise to have them dry before long. Michael also tells Hiraku that he has 3 main goals, which makes Hiraku very surprised because he was not expecting anything else from him. Michael then tells him that the first goal he has is to greet him, which he has done already. The second goal is to persuade Hiraku and the mayor into doing more business with them. And the third is to become the official government purveyor of the village. Michael wished to handle all the trade deals between them and the outside world. Michael then insists they give him the permission on those crops, promising to give them 7 times more value he will get by trading the goods. Hiraku begins to think about it, and Michael shows them a list of companies he is managing, which makes him agree with the business offer brought by Michael. Later that day, Michael insists on talking about the alcohol produced in the village, but they all shout at him, telling him that he cannot have alcohol. Michael suddenly becomes frightened and apologizes as he prepares to take his leave. Hiraku and the girls begin to talk about how skilled a merchant he is and the profit they will make if he begins to handle their goods for them. Hiraku begins to hope that he is certainly not deceiving them, and also hopes that they have smooth negotiations from there on out. Meanwhile, Michael looks back at the village while riding the dragon back home and acknowledges how scary his visit was to the village. He suddenly remembers 3 days earlier when he was visited at his office in Shashato City. Michael asked why it must be him they wanted to see. He tells his coworker to handle it, but his coworker tells him that they came with his name to see him and even brought goods from their farms. Michael became more bothered seeing they brought goods and asked if they were not aware of the rules. He tells his men to refer them somewhere else if they cannot handle it. Suddenly, he changes his mind, saying his merchant instincts are telling him not to ignore them. Michael suddenly decides to go meet them and notices that it is the lady from the Chrome family who he had met at her last birthday party, and begins to imagine how he would have been beheaded if he sent her away without listening to her. He then asks who she came with, and he notices that she is Lastus Moon of the Dragons, and he becomes even more terrified. Michael becomes more worried because he is standing before the daughter of one of the most powerful and dangerous dragons. Michael puts his fear aside and asks what they came for. The lady from the Chrome family takes him outside and tells him that they want him to buy their goods, and in exchange they will want him to find some more items for them. Michael goes towards the goods while thinking of the danger he might be getting himself into by entering trade talks with the two ladies. He suddenly opens the goods and notices that they are fruits that have entered the demonic kingdom, and begins to think of the amount of silver he would make if he gets them. Michael suddenly accepts the deal and promises to get their goods so he will not miss the deal. He immediately ordered his men to get him the best catch they had from the port in the morning so he could give it to the ladies. Michael then asks the ladies if he would want to follow them, so as to know where they're going. Lastly, quickly informs him that he will be going to the Forest of Death, where their village is. Michael becomes more scared because of how high the risks of the deal are. He follows them and they introduce him to most of the demons and angels in the demonic kingdom, which makes him more scared. After the trade meeting with the mayor, Michael is very glad that he survived it and how he managed to finish the business with the terrifying group. He's also glad because huge profits are waiting for him, but he's not sure if his body can handle it. Back at the village, Hiraku the mayor prepares another delicacy with the goods gotten from the merchant, which makes the girls very amazed. They begin to eat, and Hiraku begins to think of the more items he would later ask the merchant to get for him. The following day, the mayor is trying to battle a dragon that is coming to disturb the village. He begins to wonder why the three angels of the skies who are supposed to be patrolling the skies are not doing their jobs, or maybe trying to stop it has proved difficult. The dragon suddenly shoots fire down into the village, destroying the trees. The mayor becomes very angry and tries to bring down the dragon by throwing a spear at the dragon the first time, but he misses. He attempts the second time and successfully hits the dragon, bringing it down. The mayor then notices that it's a girl and asks her if she burned down some part of the village. Suddenly, Dry May comes and apologizes to the mayor on her behalf. He also tells the mayor that her name is Hakuren, and she is his older sister. Hakuren blames her younger brother for her actions by saying he gave out Lassie as a bride. Hiraku becomes very surprised on hearing what she said about allowing Lassie to get married to the mayor of the village. Dry May denies it all, saying he might have been drunk while saying it and he does not mean it. Hakuren uses it as an excuse and says it's her reason for coming to know who Lassie will be getting married to. Hiraku tells her that she should have come and visit in a normal way, instead of burning down the village. She proceeds to tell him how everyone is in relation to how strong he is, and said how she decided to come and play with him a little. Dry May suddenly exposes her how she came to vent her anger. She suddenly sparks and begins to tell the mayor about how her little cousin is planning to get married before her. But Hiraku holds her and tells her that he understands everything she said, but she's going to clean up the mess she caused. Hakuren agrees and begins to clean up. Back at dinner, Hakuren eats the food prepared by the mayor and notices how delicious it is. Hiraku begins to wonder how she successfully fit in within days. Lasty suddenly walks up to the mayor and apologizes for the chaos caused by her at the dinner. After dinner, Hakuren insists on playing a game, and they all conclude on playing a game of mahjong. She also tells the mayor to come and join them to play the game, and he agrees and begins to tell them the rules of the game. Hakuren tells him that she will figure the rules of the game out and insists they bet. The mayor becomes very surprised, and Dry May agrees to it, saying it will be way more interesting this way. The mayor tells them that he does not have anything to bet on. Instead, he comes up with a punishment for the loser and insists they play strip mahjong. The mayor then tells them he does not want to force anyone to do what they do not want to do, but they all agree to the terms and conditions of the mayor and agree to play. They begin to play as the tension continues to build up in the room. The mayor begins to regret coming up with the idea of playing strip mahjong. The mayor has been losing to the dragons as he observes and notices that the dragons are very good in the game of mahjong. He becomes very worried as he is down to only his underwear. and the others still have their clothing intact. He becomes even more worried and begins to wonder what is wrong and how he is losing. He begins to think that he is being cheated on, or maybe the dragons are using their powers to change the tiles. Because he does not know what's going on, he decides to use his chance by thinking he could score a double point since his tiles are complete. He begins to have thoughts of ending the entire game with just a single move, but he loses again, and he is asked to take off his pants by the girls. The mayor agrees because he made the rules and took off his pants, causing the girls to scream. Meanwhile, the demon lord Galgardo's subjects are bothered about how that village is increasing in power. But he's not bothered because his daughter is not talking to him, which makes his subject even more furious after seeing the letter of resignation from one of their men. Back at the village, Hakurin begins to teach the kids in the village mathematics, and the mayor is surprised at how eager she is to work and how she can do multitasks too. But he finally makes her the village teacher. Later that day, the Lamia girls come to beg the mayor for protection from their pets, but they did not put any clothes on. They told him how their pets came and scattered where they had stayed and came with precious and rare materials. The mayor accepts them and gives them some of his goods and insists they do errands for them. He also begs them to put on clothes while coming to the village, and he gives them some clothes to put on. The mayor also noticed how improved the crops are and decided to plant more crops. Meanwhile, somewhere outside the village, a group of girls are seeing how big the village is turning out and suspect they might be planning something foul. They conclude by taking down the village and saving Florem. 3 girls from the demonic kingdom alongside the princess decide to spy on a neighboring kingdom as they find out that the village is indeed amassing military might and planning something foul. One of their friends, whose name is Florem, had suddenly disappeared from the village. They agree that she must have been forced to stay behind and also held captive against her own will. They are set to visit the village so they can plan how to take over the village and to also save their friend Florem. Florem, on the other hand, is doing pretty well in the village as she works in one of their offices. She had been put in charge of the village accounting sector, which tends to take most of her time. However, it also does not look like she's being compelled to do anything, as the office seems rather peaceful and serene. She's buried in her typing as someone from the village enters. He appears to be one of the people she works with. He had come to give her information concerning the princess. He explains to Florem that the princess is gathering troops and preparing to go on a military campaign. Florem is shocked to hear this, as Demon Lord Galgardo's daughter, whose name is Princess Yuri, appears to be her friend. She's worried as she wonders why the princess is gathering troops. He explains that while she left the demonic kingdom, some of her followers had fed her bad news about the neighboring village. Her followers are the second daughter of the Grich family, whose name is Rosalind, the fourth daughter of the Bugok family, whose name is Klex, and the last one is the second daughter of the Monmonrose family, whose name is Rauju. She is shocked as she tries to think of a way to stop the whole thing. Florem had given the reports concerning the village before, but it appears that they did not even care about the reports, as they were not convinced because it became unrealistic at the time. The man who is reporting to Florem states that he has even spoken to the Demon Lord about the situation, but he's not taking his daughter seriously, as he treats the situation with soft hands. Florem must do something to stop them from waging unnecessary war against the village, as she needs to stop their invasion. She seeks to know when they are mobilizing, as he tells her that it is tomorrow. Florem is shocked. Why is it so fast? He suggests that someone from the village should rout their forces so that they will be forced to give up and go home. Florem must also protect the demonic kingdom, because if they are careless about the situation, the demonic kingdom will be greatly affected, hence the destruction. She must boycott them and show them what the village looks like and how dangerous it is, as it also has a dragon family in it. The 4 girls journey on to the village only to encounter Florem and a few other people on the way, alongside a group of soldiers who are bullied by some girls from the village. This had scared them from the beginning, as they wondered how dangerous the village could be. Florem holds them hostage, stating that they will work for her, and the work is strenuous. The work will last for a long term, as they will not be going back home. Hiraku, who works alongside Florem, inquires to know about the last lady who seems to be in a luxury chair. She appears to be the princess, but neither Florem nor her state that she is the princess, as Florem will have her work for a short while also, only that she will also be allowed to return back sooner than the others. To the surprise of Florem, the princess does not have a problem working for them. However, her friends keep complaining about the environment and the harsh reception. Florem states that Hiraku should eliminate anyone that proves stubborn by not working hard or anyone that speaks ill of the village. The four girls are gripped with fear as they wonder if this is apparently supposed to be the end of their lives. Their first assignment is to pluck apples from the tree, as it is to be used for a different purpose later. The princess begins to pluck them while the rest of them hesitate to go near the apples, as they only get to eat them in their noble space. They remark that they have never seen how it is fetched, as it has always been fetched for them without stress. They state that if the demonic kingdom ends up taking over the village, they will never have to stress over such things anymore, and they will be very rich. However, they switch rather quickly from their fantasies as Florem snaps at them, reminding them about the instructions she had given Hiraku. They keep complaining as they stop remembering what Florem had told Hiraku. Some sets of children inquire if the princess can help them with a menial set, as she is glad to do it. The three girls are as shocked as they exclaim that a princess is not supposed to do things like that. She looks at them sternly, as the fact that she is a princess is definitely supposed to be a secret to the children, as they remember again that they might be eliminated by Hiraku for what they had just done. They keep closely stating that they should not mind whatever they have said. The princess accompanies the kids as they gather snails from swamping areas. The other girls also are delegated to other jobs as everyone gets busy. They eventually settle down in the evening as they prepare dinner together. Everyone retires to bed after a stress-filled day. On the next day, the same routine is repeated, as Florem is delighted that she is carrying out the plan she has sketched. The other girls seem to also be enjoying the environment already, even more than the princess herself. It's finally time for them to return, as they decide to stay without the princess. The princess has to return to the kingdom. She has discussed it with Florem earlier, as she stated that she was worried when she suddenly left the demonic kingdom, and that is what propelled her to gather the troops, as she had made up her mind to save Florem no matter what. Florem regards her as the princess, which pisses her off. She states that she wants to be called by her name, as Florem keeps acting like they had not been friends from childhood. Florem recalls that she is the princess. However, the latter does not seem to care about this, as she regards Florem as her friend. She states that it hurts that Florem has treated her like a stranger, and with extreme respect since she became a princess. Florem agrees to treat her like her friend, as they both embrace each other. The princess is set to go as she expresses her gratitude to them for being so nice to her. She had seen so many peculiar things about the village, and she also met her long-lost friend. The children cajole her to stay for a while, as she states that she must leave as there are situations that she must attend to. She promises to always come to visit them, as the rest of the ladies have already made up their minds to stay. It appears that they are enjoying the village and do not want to leave just yet. They make up their excuses so they can stay, as they also state that they still have some favors to repay. They seem to be munching on something and also talking at the same time, as the princess warns them to be careful of talking and eating simultaneously. The princess is gifted fresh bread from the yeast they had gathered from the field. She appreciates them for taking very good care of her as she exits with one of the palace workers. After Princess Yuri returns to the palace, her father speaks with one of the officials, stating some things he had noticed about his daughter. He had noticed that she hardly gave him time, as she had been very busy since she got back. The official states that she might take interest in diplomacy and politics sooner than expected, as she seems to have grown in the past few weeks. The king becomes furious as he terms the growth as something else, as he asks if she had met a man, as he threatens to tear the young man apart upon meeting him. The official calms him down and explains that it's not that form of growth, as they proceed to meet her and show her how amazing the king can be as a father. A short while after Princess Yuri had left the neighboring village, they began their pre-winter crop harvest, and the result came out well. Some of them ask that a small quantity of the bountiful harvest be delivered to their parents, as Hiraku states that he does not have a problem with that. The dragon lady among them also asks that the same be done to her grandmother and grandfather, who were rather recognized immediately as great and fearful dragons. She merely chuckles, stating that it's exaggerated as they are not dangerous as everyone thinks. Hiraku then instructs them to deliver the harvest as stated. However, on her way back from the delivery, she finds some people that wanted to move to their village as a result of some circumstances. One of them introduces herself as Ya, the leader of the group, as they are being mistaken as dark elves. She's surprised to hear this from Hiraku, as they only refer to them as mountain elves. However, all those things do not matter, and what matters is that they need a place to stay because it has been hard for them to feed on the mountain top for a while. They are elves, so most times they have to hunt for meat, and so they had approached Hiraku with the hope of getting a place to stay in the forest. He thinks for a while as the leader of the elves feels bad that he might not accept them, so she states that if they are bothering them in one way or the other, they do not mind leaving. Hiraku discards these feelings as he states that he is only trying to think of how to make things work, like building them a house to stay in, and where they could sleep before then. They are delighted that Hiraku is not discarding them as they are welcome to stay. They settle down for the night and decide to go hunting the next day. However, their attempt to at least secure a good hunt was to no avail, as they had sustained injuries instead. Hiraku is shocked to see Ya with so many injuries as they conclude the forest is not so favorable to them hunting all by themselves. Later that day, Hiraku tries to mold soil into a pot and other utensils, but it turns out badly as the soil of the village is not perfect to build such things. Ya decides to repay him for his kindness by going to get him good soil from the mountain area. He disapproves of this as he thinks that she might get hurt. She tries to convince him by stating that the elves understand the mountain environment better than anyone. He eventually succumbs as they are able to make strong clay pots from the soil Ya had gotten from the mountain. The elves state that they should be allowed to hunt for bloody vipers, as they are of great nutrients to them. Hiraku states that they cannot be allowed to hunt alone as it's very dangerous. A meeting needs to be held with the villagers by winter. Later that night, Hiraku goes to see Lulusi, one of his workers and friends. He hears that she is sick. He checks on her and worries written all over his face. The other ladies in the room inquire if she feels like eating anything sour. She affirms this while they detect that she is pregnant. Everyone is shocked, including Hiraku and Lulusi herself. Everything seemed peaceful in the village, as the girls from the demon village had stayed behind except the princess. Hiraku has seen to the maximum serenity of things and the smooth running of things in the village. Lu, who is one of them, is pregnant. As he keeps his eyes on her, he makes sure she gets everything she needs, including the smallest things. Lu is surprised at the extreme care he seems to be giving her. She asks him to take things easy, as he should not worry too much about her. Hiraku explains his routine of things in the small serene town. The girls always prefer him to wake up very early. However, this is not possible as he always retires to bed late, because he practically oversees everything in the town. He wishes that they understood him and see that he's not lazy. He only has to oversee things. They make different reports to him as he delegates duties and solutions to their problems. They had their complaints about how wine seemed to have wasted overnight as he prepared to sort things out. Flora, who oversees the cooking of their meals, scrutinizes everyone during breakfast, as she seems to be paying close attention to her cooking. She also seems to be carrying out a few experiments that seem strange to the others. Hiraku notices that she probably has not had sufficient time for herself, as her eyes are heavy and sleepy. He implores her to rest as she ignores him and faces her experiment. They settle for breakfast as everyone goes to rest for a while before resuming the activities of the day. One of them comes to give a report to Hiraku concerning the killer rabbits that invaded the village. However, she states that they are laid off by the dogs that are placed to protect the town. The mayor is disgusted, as some of the people who live with him are quite lazy, as they while away time and leave some of their chores to others, including their laundry. After breakfast, Hiraku settles for his afternoon work in the garden, where he takes care of the plants and also fends off the dangerous insects on them, as the crops need to be protected so as to have a good harvest. After working hard in the afternoon, his lunch is being brought to him as the ladies watch him eat alongside the others. The elves are quite shocked that there is excessive sufficiency of food, as everyone has more than enough to eat. They inquire if they will ever have to leave the forest, as Hiraku is shocked that they would even think of something like that, when his major goal is to see it that no one lacks food in the gathering. The three noble daughters who are the princess's friends also enjoy the excessive provision of food, as it's one of the reasons that has made them stay back. One of them made the suggestion that they should talk to Michael so that they could sell out more of the things that were produced. After Hiraku's farm work, everyone also wraps up whatever they're doing, as it's very important for them to engage in one exercise or the other, as this is to keep them fit and ready to do anything without getting tired for a very long time. Hiraku also believes that it will help some ladies correct their shapes and also keep them physically fit, as it's quite compulsory for everyone to participate in it. Hiraku chooses a spot to begin his own exercise as he strikes a tree severely. He's eventually frustrated as the tree he had aimed at seems to be more powerful than he is. He had missed his target severely and could only let out his annoyance by striking the tree vehemently. However, his frustration only increases as he's unable to retaliate. One of the mountain elves approaches him as he is delighted by the weapon she is holding. He quickly collects the weapon and tries to strike the tree as he misses his target again. He gives up as the girl aims 3 weapons at the tree at once, meeting her target. Hiraku is shocked as he inquires to know how she achieved that. He brings out a different weapon entirely and strikes it at the tree. To the surprise of the girl, the target is met as his throw splits the tree into 2. She inquires as to how he's able to achieve something like that. After the exercise, it's time for everyone to go to bed, as dinner is to be served before everyone goes to bed. Flora serves the dinner as Hiraku is asked to taste it first. As she had never made something like that before, she states that it is rabbit and honey sauce. He asks her to rate her recipe on a scale of 1 to 100, as she rates it at 20. One of them quickly tastes it and exclaims that it seems to be very delicious. Flora is wrong. It's not on a scale of 20, it's more than that. Hiraku asks her to only prepare dishes that she is sure to a scale of 50 and above, as she declines, saying that she does not have the luxury of time and they cannot afford to waste food. He eventually agrees with her. After eating dinner, he retires to the convenient bathroom alongside others, as it's important to have his bath before going to sleep. He feels rather delighted that the bathroom is big enough for them, as he is comfortable and the water is soothing. It is eventually time to retire to bed, as 3 of them follow Hiraku secretly to his room. He notices that some sets of people are following him as he watches closely. On getting to his room, he decides to catch them as he shouts for help. They were all available to render help at the moment, as they retired after seeing that they had been caught. Hiraku is, however, grateful that he has people to look after him. They had probably followed him to make sure he was safe and free from harm in any way. He eventually retires to bed, tiredly because he seems to have had a really long day. On waking the next morning, he decides to check on the men making wine for the town. They ask him for more ingredients as they need to improve their service and taste. Hiraku thinks about how he can attend to their needs, when he's interrupted by the townspeople who come to report something to him. He's on alert as their mode of explanation is giving type of alarm. They report that they have come across a very strange man as he follows them to check who the strange man is. He deduces that the man is strange as he meets him in a weird position. The man is seen bowing to the ground for no sole purpose as Hiraku waits patiently to hear from the stranger. He lifts his head rather swiftly, causing everyone to tilt backward. He greets them warmly as he recognizes the pregnant Lu. He congratulates her. The scenery seems to give everyone peace of mind, as they are relieved that he knows one of them, and since Lu also did not deny knowing him, they welcome him to their abode. He speaks to Lu, stating that her pregnancy seems a bit strange as vampires are supposed to bring forth new breeds by themselves. However, since her pregnancy is here already, nothing can be done. Apparently, rather than for it to be accepted and taken care of, Lu refers to him as the progenitor. as everyone is confused as to which progenitor. Lu explains that the progenitor is the same as his ancestor. The man explains better, stating that he has lived for many years. Hiraku is very shocked as he inquires to know how many years he's probably lived for in his lifetime. He states that he has lived for 4,000 years, and he keeps erasing his memory because he wants to forget how many years he's lived for. And the last time he erased it was a duration of 200 years from the present time. Hiraku and the others are shocked because he looks very young, and they believe that he could not have possibly been that young if he truly lived for those years. They conclude that he probably got his powers from being a vampire. However, he explains that he had gotten his powers from magic. He had only prevented himself from looking old through the use of magic. He asks Hiraku for a statue he had seen outside earlier, as that was what he was admiring, as everyone terms him strange. Hiraku now understands the cause. He had seen the statue as a sacred creature, and he would like to take it with him. Hiraku, however, explains that he cannot take the statue with him as it's for the village. However, because of his pressing demand for it, Hiraku promises to make a replica of the statue for him. Hiraku eventually makes it for the man, who seems really satisfied with the outcome of the statue, as it looks exactly like the original one. It's time for the man to return to where he came to visit from, as the statue is what drew his attention to the village at first, as he would not have visited in the first place. He checks up on Lu again as he inquires about what Hiraku would like to get in return for his kindness and the statue he had made. However, Hiraku declines, stating that the statue is seen as sacred and it is definitely not to be put up for sale. Hiraku is delighted but still insists. However, after much persuasion, he succumbs and decides to leave for his town. He inquires to know what type of man he is from Lu, who states that he is a noble and highly respected man. This happens to be true as he is welcomed like a prince on returning home. He shows one of his attendants the statue as he admires the statue, stating that it is magnificent and rather different from the usual statues. He asks that the former statue be removed and replaced with the one the mayor had made, as the man obeys without any question. The man suggests that Hiraku is appreciated and rewarded openly, as the progenitor disagrees, knowing the type of man Hiraku, the mayor, is. He was aware that Hiraku would not appreciate such open gratitude, especially when he had stated that the statue was a free gift, and nothing must be paid in return for it. However, the progenitor is very wise, as he eventually sent a large, fancy, and very new piano to the town. He states that it's a gift to Lu, who is currently pregnant. Hiraku thinks he's too kind for a noble man and appreciates his gift to Lu. The piano is taken to the dining room where everyone can see it, as the three noble girls from the Demon Kingdom try to learn to use the piano. It seemed rather too big for them to practice with as they approached Hiraku with tears, stating that he should get them a new piano. He eventually gets another piano with the help of Michael, as the difference in the piano is not as fancy as the piano the progenitor had sent. However, everyone seems happy with the piano, as they can now learn with it. Everyone wants to learn how to play it, but certainly not everyone can play it, as it appears that only Florem and the girls from the Demon Kingdom play quite well. However, others move rather close to them so that they can learn, as the sound they produce through the piano seems to suit the ears of people, and it also appeals to their spirit. It is time to eventually retire to bed, as Hiraku seems to be suffering from the noise of the piano. The people are excited, and they have refused to go to bed because of the piano. They are consumed with the excitement of learning and getting better. The mayor tries to understand this as he eventually struggles to retire to bed.
After spring has passed by at the Great Tree Village, and now the scorching sun shines on the residents as they all tend to the farm, the vegetables all look so much brighter and more colorful after being kissed by the sun for a little while. Hiraku places the last pickle inside the box before telling everyone to gather around to have lunch as it's break time. They all immediately stop what they are doing and happily rush to set up the food. The mayor notices that one of the tomato plants is growing taller than the rest. so he snips it down back to size. Hiraka feels like he's much more knowledgeable about farming than when he first started, which is to be expected. He decides to check the other plants to see if there are any more that are overgrowing, but before he can proceed, his vampire wife calls to him to stop and take the break that he called for. They set up a picnic in the shade of the trees, and as the others enjoy the food, Hiraka sits separately with his wife, explaining that he just can't help himself working when he looks at the crops. She gestures towards his cup, so he brings it closer. She uses her magic to create a block of ice for his drink, which he enjoys and finds revitalizing. Since he can't use magic, the mayor is always amazed when he sees it being used. Lou laughs at him because all the things he's impressed by are just basic things. She worries in a lighthearted way that he will work too hard and collapse, but he assures her that he will be fine. Hiraka changes the topic as he asks if it's okay for her to be walking around in her heavily pregnant state. She educates him that she has heard that it's good if she gets some exercise. The village females are the source of the information. It is revealed that some of the ogre maids have given birth themselves. This is reassuring for the mayor to hear since he doesn't know anything about pregnancy. He finds it strange to think that a child is growing inside of her belly. The guy wonders what it feels like for her. Later on, the less experienced ladies want to know the same thing because Lou's belly has gotten so big. She explains that it feels like one is carrying 2 heads of cabbage. Tia imagines it and thinks that it's quite heavy. Rhea is so happy for her but is innocently salty because the high elf ladies want to repopulate their race. Senna wonders if it's going to be a boy or a girl. The others ask if there is a way for them to know at this moment. The ladies question Lou if there is anything they can do to make her feel more comfortable and offer their assistance if she needs anything. She lets them know that she's fine for now as everyone is already so attentive. The vampire lost her appetite, but it seems to be back now. The only thing that is bothering her is that she can't drink happy juice at the moment. The others jolt up with concerned looks as they feel sorry for her. All the while, Zabuton prepares for the new arrival by knitting a few baby clothes. Back inside the mayor's office, the angels along with the other females plead for Hiraku to sell all the happy juice in the village. This request confuses the mayor, but after a brief explanation, he understands that they are giving up the happy juice for Lou. However, when they think about not being able to take their favorite drink, they are mortified because it marries so well with the food they eat. So they feel like the only other option is to remove the source of everyone's suffering. Hiraka tells them to calm down. He's happy that they are all being so supportive of Lou, but he is sure that they will regret selling the happy juice. They love the stuff so much that they put a slime on trial for drinking 1 barrel and demanding the maximum punishment. Plus, the happy juice is not something that they can replace quickly if they do start to get cold feet. So he suggests that they keep the juice of happiness sealed in the barrels for longer because the taste becomes more complex when aged for a while. This will mean that they will have tastier happy juice when it's the appropriate time for them to drink. Till then, they will also be supporting Lou by abstaining. This should be a motivator to resist the urge while they look forward to drinking it. All their worried faces turn to smiles with his solution. Meanwhile, at the distillery, Donovan is the exact opposite of happy as he looks down with a dismal look on his face. His men also have the same impression on their faces as their boss asks the mayor if they have done something wrong. He's perplexed as he questions what happened. The brewmaster explains that everyone used to love drinking his happy juice. Now all of a sudden, they will not drink a single drop. This shocks Hiraku, so he explains the situation to Donovan, which puts them at ease now that they know that the villagers still love the happy juice they produce. The mayor apologized for not letting them know about the new arrangement. Donovan was planning to slow down production, but after hearing the news, he anticipates that they are going to be having big craving for his work, so he decides to rather pick up production. Hiraku agrees that people will drink more to make up for the lost time. As the village leader leaves, Donovan promises to do his best to live up to everyone's expectations. The criminal slime mentioned relaxes in a basket of vegetables that are being washed in the water. The other creatures also cool off in the outdoor pools. Zabuton chills in the trees with one of her kids as they flex with an umbrella they made. Back inside, Hiraka comes in to check on his wife, who is staying indoors because of the intense heat outside. He points out that it's almost time to pop out his son, and she agrees. The topic changes to a flower on the table, and Lou explains that it was Tia and the angels who brought it after they came to visit. They found it blooming on a faraway mountain where there was still snow. Hiraka notices that it makes the room feel cooler. She confirms that the flower releases cold air. Ya interrupts the couple's talk to offer Lou some secret mountain elf medicine said to bring good health and vigor. The others also come in to give various gifts that will aid in the birth or the recovery. By the close of the day, Lou has a table full of various gifts. the mayor notices a wooden mallet and his wife tells him that it was from Donovan. He only told her that it will come in handy later, so Hiraku asks if that means they will need it for childbirth. He pauses when he realizes that something is wrong with Lu. She feels like it's time. The mayor informs the ogres, who quickly start making preparations for the delivery. Hiraku just goes to his room, but the nerves become too much, so he decides to go outside and has a major throwback as he finds comfort in the area he carved within the tree when he first got to the location. He sits there with the two statues till the day breaks. He finally enters his wife's room, and as he approaches, everyone moves for him to pass. As they smile at him, Hiraku is at a loss for words and asks if he can hold the baby. The other females warn him to be careful. After some pointers, he holds his son perfectly and is moved that he is a father. Daddy Hiraku gets excited when he sees his son smiling and reminisces about his original life and how he suffered from illness. He never thought he would have his offspring. The mayor asks his son to grow up to be strong for him. Lu believes that he will be strong because they will raise him to be so. After a short while, Hiraku starts to panic when the baby begins to cry. Everyone also tries to calm the little one down. A week passes since Lu gave birth, and Hiraku works hard with his almighty farming tool to prepare a new parcel of land for growing. The child's name is Alfred, and he's technically half vampire on some Twilight movement, but for now, he looks like a normal human. Hiraku stops for a moment as he appreciates how far he has come from when he just arrived in the area. All the people that joined him along the way and the expertise they brought to progress the village forward rush into his mind. The residents even gave them gifts after the delivery. He feels like he needs to do something to thank all the villagers for their kindness and hard work to build the village. The mayor later calls the girls to introduce a new system into the village. He presents a coin that he dubs a reward medal. Hiraku wants to give these medals out to everyone who helped build up the village. He wants everyone to use them to trade them for goods and services. Once the Great Tree Village reaches a certain size, it will need its currency. The current system of the mayor delegating commodities is not scalable. The currency allows for the trading of merchandise without the mayor being involved, and also allows the value of goods to be determined by the majority. Since it's a test, he gives everyone 3 coins to start with, and they all begin to use them for different things. Some buy products while others use them to decorate their rooms with it, but the mayor prefers them to do the former. The kids even use their coins to rent the mayor out for the day, so he had to play with them and entertain them. After a while, Hiraku finally gathers everyone in the village in the evening for a giant feast to celebrate the birth of his son. All the ladies wait with poised looks with their happy juice in their hands. It has been a while, so as soon as the mayor gives the cheers signal, they all begin to eat and drink. The joy on their faces makes Lu feel bad for keeping them all waiting, but Hiraku explains that he couldn't have the feast right after she gave birth, so they had to delay it. He's happy that everything worked out since they are all enjoying themselves, but he's just a little worried that they might drink too much happy juice. While everyone parties, Flora plays with her nephew. The mayor looks to his wife and wants to know why she is holding the wooden mallet. She reveals that Donovan told her to bring it along when she was coming. Shortly after, the brewmaster brings a barrel with the help of his workers. He tells Hiraku that it's a special kind of feat juice made just for the couple. It's their way of celebrating with them. He finally reveals the use of the wooden mallet as he prompts them to break the lid. The two do it together successfully, and everyone starts to cheer again. The mayor calls them all to drink. This is music to Drime's ears. Where there is happy juice, this guy will be there having the best time. The couple decides to fetch 1 bottle to preserve so that they can enjoy it with their son when he's old enough. The party rages on all night. The following morning, word reaches the Demon King of the new arrival at the Great Tree Village. The generals sit with the Demon Lord as they finally accept that they don't have the firepower to take out the Great Tree Village. Grath suggests they try and maintain a good relationship with the village and proposes marriage as a way for the demonic kingdom to cement that bond. The Demon King starts getting angry because he doesn't want to give his daughter up for marriage. Elsewhere, Michael sits in his office meticulously planning how he's going to congratulate the Great Tree Village's new arrival. He doesn't want to ruin things with such a lucrative partner. Meanwhile, at the village, Hiraku's 3 top advisors inform him that they are expecting over 100 more people to join the village as refugees because of the ongoing wars. Given such high numbers, Hiraku has no other option but to build another village, and his current team is excited about his new challenge. That brings the season to an end.